What if everything you think you know about Yahweh is incomplete? The familiar image of the all-powerful Creator may obscure a more complex and fascinating history, one rooted in ancient Near Eastern mythology and religious evolution. Could Yahweh's origins be less divinely unique than commonly believed, forged instead through complex interactions of power, syncretism, and perhaps even suppression? To truly understand Yahweh, we must first journey back to the polytheistic landscape of the ancient Near East. Imagine a world teeming with gods and goddesses, storm gods like Baal, fertility goddesses like Asherah, and creator deities like El, each vying for worship and influence in Canaanite, Mesopotamian, and Egyptian religions. Archaeological evidence reveals the early Israelites interacted extensively with these polytheistic cultures, embracing syncretism and worshipping multiple gods. While the traditional religious narrative presents Yahweh as the one true God, alternative scholarly interpretations challenge this view, citing evidence of polytheistic practices within early Israelite religion. This is not about rejecting religious belief, but embarking on a historical and esoteric exploration to achieve a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of Yahweh's origins. Why is understanding these hidden origins so significant? Gaining a deeper insight into the evolution of monotheism allows us to see how our own faith systems were shaped by the currents of time. Recognizing the shared roots and syncretic nature of many religious traditions fosters a more inclusive and tolerant understanding of religious diversity. Esoteric knowledge offers a transformative potential, a chance to connect with the divine and to grasp the deeper symbolism of religious figures and narratives. By understanding these hidden origins, can we better grasp our own spiritual identity and the very nature of faith itself? Here, then, is our thesis. Yahweh's identity as the sole deity of Israel was not a sudden divine revelation. It was a gradual process of syncretism and assimilation, where a storm god figure absorbed attributes and epithets from other deities, particularly El and Baal. Through political and religious developments, Yahweh emerged as the dominant god. This thesis will unlock a deeper understanding of religious evolution, power dynamics, and the esoteric symbolism of Yahweh, offering a new perspective on the origins of monotheism. Join us as we embark on this journey of discovery. First, we'll examine the historical roots of Yahweh in the ancient Near East, tracing his connections to other storm gods and deities. Then, we'll explore the process of syncretism and assimilation, highlighting how Yahweh absorbed attributes and epithets from El, Baal, and Asherah. Finally, we'll analyze the esoteric interpretations of Yahweh's symbolism, linking him to Kabbalistic concepts and broader themes of cosmic creation and human consciousness. Let's begin at the real beginning. Why were storm gods so prevalent and important in the ancient Near East? Imagine a world where survival hinged on the capricious whims of nature. These weren't abstract deities. They were the embodiment of life-giving rain, the terror of destructive storms, and the arbiters of agricultural abundance. The cultural and environmental context of the ancient Near East made storm gods incredibly relevant. The region's dependence on rainfall for agriculture was absolute, the difference between sustenance and starvation. The unpredictable nature of storms, both their life-giving and destructive potential, instilled a profound respect, even fear, of the powers that controlled them. The climate, characterized by arid conditions, punctuated by periods of intense rainfall and devastating storms, directly shaped the religious beliefs of the people. Consider the cyclical nature of life in these regions: drought followed by torrential rains, famine followed by harvest. This constant cycle of destruction and renewal mirrored in the stories of storm gods battling chaos and death, such as Baal's conflicts with Yam and Mo. This is a pattern we see repeated in other polytheistic religions as well. Storm gods, therefore, held a central position in the pantheons of Mesopotamia, Canaan, and surrounding regions. They were far more than weather-controlling figures. They were integral to the social, political, and economic stability of these societies. Their core responsibilities included control over weather patterns, ensuring timely rainfall for crops, protection from destructive storms, and bestowing fertility upon the land and its inhabitants. Mountains were also frequently associated with storm gods, regarded as the places from which storms originated and the boundary between the earthly and the divine. Were these gods simply metaphors for nature, or was there something more to these beliefs? Now, let's delve into a detailed comparative analysis of specific storm god figures and their attributes, beginning with one of the most prominent. Baal, a primary example of a prominent storm god in Canaanite religion, was more than just a deity. He was a cultural phenomenon, an icon, and a symbol of power. His importance cannot be overstated, as evidenced by the widespread archaeological discoveries of Baal temples and iconography throughout the Levant. What made Baal such a popular deity? Perhaps it was his direct connection to the immediate needs of the people: rain for crops, protection from drought, and victory over enemies. Baal's attributes and epithets paint a vivid picture of his power and authority. He was known as Rider on the Clouds, a title that emphasizes his dominion over the skies and his ability to command the weather. He was also Lord of the Earth, signifying his control over the land and its fertility. Associations with thunder, lightning, and rain were central to his identity, solidifying his role as the bringer of life, giving water, and the harbinger of destructive storms. What specific powers did Baal possess? He could unleash torrential downpours or withhold rain, bringing famine. He could summon lightning to strike down his enemies or use thunder to inspire awe and fear. He wielded the power of the storm, both its life-giving and destructive aspects. Baal's role in Canaanite mythology is equally compelling, filled with epic battles and dramatic confrontations. His battles with Yam, the sea god, and Mo, the god of death, are particularly significant, highlighting his role as a protector and life-giver. In the Baal cycle, discovered at Ugarit, Baal confronts Yam, the embodiment of chaos and the unruly sea, ultimately defeating him and establishing order. Later, Baal faces Mo, the god of death and the underworld, who swallows Baal, bringing drought and infertility to the land. Baal's sister Anat eventually defeats Mo, restoring Baal to life and bringing back the rains. How did Baal's mythology reflect the challenges of Canaanite life? These myths mirrored the constant struggle for survival in an environment where drought, storms, and death were ever-present threats. Baal's victories over Yam and Mo represented the triumph of life and order over chaos and death, offering hope and reassurance to his worshippers. But what if these battles were more than just stories? What if they were esoteric allegories for cosmic forces? Baal's connection to kingship and fertility further solidified his importance in Canaanite society. His worship was intricately linked to ensuring agricultural prosperity and royal power. Kings often identified themselves with Baal, associating their rule with his divine authority and their ability to bring abundance to the land. Temples dedicated to Baal were often located in close proximity to royal palaces, symbolizing the close relationship between the deity and the ruler. Fertility rituals, often involving sacred prostitution and offerings of crops and livestock, were performed to ensure Baal's favor and guarantee a bountiful harvest. What was the relationship between Baal and the Canaanite rulers? The rulers legitimized their power through their association with Baal, presenting themselves as his earthly representatives. In return, Baal's worship provided the rulers with a means of controlling the population and ensuring their loyalty. Now, let us turn to another significant storm god figure in the ancient Near East. Hadad, another significant storm god figure in the ancient Near East, held sway particularly in Syrian and Mesopotamian regions. While Baal was prominent in Canaan, Hadad was revered across a broader geographical area, including parts of modern-day Syria, Iraq, and Turkey. What regions revered Hadad? The kingdom of Aram, ancient Syria, was a major center of Hadad worship, with temples dedicated to him in cities like Damascus and Aleppo. His influence also extended into parts of Mesopotamia, where he was sometimes associated with the Akkadian storm god Ishkur. Comparing Hadad's attributes and epithets to those of Baal, we find striking similarities in their roles as controllers of weather, warriors, and providers of fertility. Both were depicted as powerful figures who commanded the skies, wielded lightning and thunder, and brought rain to the land. Both were also associated with mountains, often depicted standing atop them, symbolizing their dominion over the natural world. What characteristics did Hadad and Baal share? They both embodied the raw power of the storm, capable of both creation and destruction. They both served as protectors of their people, battling against chaos and ensuring the continuation of life. Hadad's iconography, often depicted with lightning bolts and a club, further emphasizes his power and authority. He was frequently portrayed as a muscular, bearded figure, wearing a horned helmet and brandishing a lightning bolt, the ultimate symbol of divine power. The club, another common attribute, symbolized his role as a warrior and his ability to crush his enemies. What symbols were associated with Hadad? Bulls were also associated with Hadad, representing his strength and virility. In some depictions, he is shown riding a bull, further emphasizing his power over the animal world and his connection to fertility. The spread of Hadad's cult and its influence on other storm god figures in the region highlights the phenomenon of syncretism and shared religious elements in the ancient Near East. As cultures interacted and exchanged ideas, their religious beliefs often blended and merged, resulting in the assimilation of deities and the sharing of attributes and epithets. How did Hadad's worship influence other cultures? In some regions, Hadad became associated with local storm gods, absorbing their characteristics and incorporating them into his own mythology. This syncretistic process led to a complex web of interconnected deities, each with their own unique features, but sharing common roots in the ancient Near Eastern storm god archetype. Let us now explore El, the high god of the Canaanite pantheon, and his connection to storm-related phenomena. El, the high god of the Canaanite pantheon, occupied a position of supreme authority and was often regarded as the father of all the gods. While Baal was the active storm god, El was more of a remote, patriarchal figure, residing in the heavens and overseeing the affairs of the cosmos. What was El's role in the Canaanite pantheon? He was the creator god, responsible for bringing the world into existence. He was also a wise and just ruler, maintaining cosmic order and dispensing justice. The epithets and attributes of El that link him to storms, though less direct than Baal's, are nevertheless significant. He was known as Bull El, a title that emphasizes his strength, virility, and power. Bulls were often associated with storms, symbolizing thunder and the power of procreation. He was also called Father of Years, highlighting his role as the source of time, seasons, and the cyclical renewal of nature. What aspects of El connect him to storm gods? His association with thunder and rain, though not as prominent as Baal's, is evident in some texts. He was also linked to mountains, regarded as sacred places and the source of life-giving water. El's role as a creator god and his association with mountains and cosmic order connect him to the broader storm god archetype. Storm gods were not simply controllers of weather. They were often seen as the forces that brought order out of chaos, creating the conditions for life to flourish. El's role as the creator god aligns with this broader archetype, as he was responsible for establishing the foundations of the world and ensuring its continued existence. How did El's characteristics align with the storm god archetype? His power, authority, and association with mountains and cosmic order all reflect the key attributes of storm gods in the ancient Near East. Now, consider the potential for El's characteristics and epithets to have influenced the development of Yahweh's identity in early Israelite religion. What if Yahweh was not a completely new deity, but rather an amalgamation of existing beliefs and traditions? This is where the concept of syncretism becomes crucial to our understanding. How might El have influenced the development of Yahweh? The early Israelites, who emerged from the Canaanite cultural milieu, would have been familiar with El and his attributes. As Yahweh rose to prominence, he may have absorbed some of El's characteristics, including his role as a creator god, his association with mountains, and his epithets of power and authority. Let's take a moment to summarize the shared attributes and roles of Baal, Hadad, and El. This reveals a compelling pattern: the storm god archetype as a prominent and influential figure in the ancient Near East. What common threads link these deities? They all possessed control over weather phenomena, served as warriors and protectors, and were associated with fertility and royal power. Their geographical distribution, with their presence in regions surrounding ancient Israel, underscores the potential for cultural exchange and religious syncretism. Where were these gods primarily worshipped? From the Levant to Mesopotamia, these deities held sway, their influence permeating the religious landscape of the ancient Near East. So what are the implications of these shared attributes and geographical connections for understanding the origins of Yahweh? The suggestion here is that Yahweh may have emerged from a similar cultural and religious milieu. Could it be that Yahweh, in his earliest form, was not entirely distinct from these other storm gods? Could he have been, at least in part, a product of syncretism, borrowing elements from Baal, Hadad, and El? What might these similarities suggest about Yahweh's origins? They suggest that Yahweh's identity as a storm god may have been shaped by pre-existing traditions and beliefs. This does not diminish Yahweh's significance, but rather provides a more nuanced and historically grounded understanding of his origins. But here's what they don't want you to know: what if the idea that Yahweh formed from existing beliefs is not right at all? What if Yahweh was once a name of a much more sinister being? Now let us explore how Yahweh adopted and adapted these storm god attributes. We must set the stage for a discussion of syncretism and religious evolution. How did these storm god traditions shape Yahweh's identity? The answer, as we will see, lies in understanding the complex interplay of cultural exchange, political maneuvering, and esoteric symbolism that shaped the religious landscape of ancient Israel. So let us seek the light. The evolution of deities is rarely a story of immaculate creation. Rather, it's a narrative of assimilation, adaptation, and the absorption of traits and powers from other gods. Is Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, an exception to this rule, or did his identity also evolve through a process of syncretism and assimilation? This isn't about diminishing the divine, but about understanding the intricate tapestry of religious history. This process of divine evolution is not unique to Yahweh. In regions with diverse religious influences, deities often borrowed and integrated attributes from one another. Cultural exchange, political dynamics, and the human desire for a more comprehensive and appealing divine figure all played a role. Consider this: the traditional view often presents Yahweh as a uniquely divine and unchanging being, a concept deeply ingrained in religious doctrine. However, a historical and comparative approach reveals a more complex and nuanced picture. So let us explore the specific instances where Yahweh appears to have adopted attributes and epithets from other deities. We must challenge the notion of a purely original and independent divine identity and ask ourselves, is it possible that the foundations of one of the world's major religions rest, in part, on a process of religious borrowing and adaptation? To truly understand the evolution of Yahweh, we must first define the key concepts at play: religious syncretism and assimilation. Religious syncretism refers to the blending of different religious beliefs and practices, while assimilation describes the process by which one deity absorbs the characteristics of another. These processes were common in the ancient Near East, driven by cultural contact, conquest, and the merging of different populations and their religious traditions. Think of it like this: religions, like languages, evolve and change over time, borrowing and adapting elements from one another. Consider the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar, for example. Ishtar, in many ways, is the Sumerian goddess Inanna. As cultures interacted, Inanna took on new attributes, myths, and even powers, essentially morphing into the goddess Ishtar. This is a clear example of religious assimilation. Political power often played a crucial role, with rulers encouraging the worship of a combined deity to unify their territories and consolidate their authority. Could the same forces have been at work in the formation of early Israelite religion? What if the image of Yahweh we have today is not a being, but an amalgamation of many? Textual evidence from the Hebrew Bible itself provides intriguing clues that suggest Yahweh adopted epithets and roles originally associated with El, the high god of the Canaanite pantheon. Epithets such as El Shaddai, God Almighty, and El Elyon, God Most High, were initially associated with El, but later became attributed to Yahweh. El Shaddai appears frequently in the book of Genesis, particularly in connection with promises of fertility and divine blessing. El Elyon, meaning God Most High, is used in Genesis 14:18-20, where Melchizedek, king of Salem, is described as a priest of El Elyon. This title is later applied to Yahweh, suggesting a merging of their identities. How did these epithets, originally associated with El, come to be applied to Yahweh? Passages in the Hebrew Bible describe Yahweh as a creator god, a judge, and a king, roles traditionally attributed to El in Canaanite mythology. In Psalm 29, for instance, Yahweh's voice is described as thundering over the waters, a clear echo of El's role as a powerful creator deity who controls the cosmic forces. Archaeological evidence, while limited, provides further support for this view. Inscriptions and artifacts have been discovered that depict Yahweh alongside symbols and imagery associated with El, suggesting a merging of their identities in the minds of early Israelites. At the site of Kuntalit Ajrud, for example, inscriptions were found that refer to Yahweh and his Asherah, raising questions about the nature of their relationship and the extent of syncretism in early Israelite religion. What does it mean that El and Yahweh seem to share similar traits? Scholarly interpretations of these findings suggest that Yahweh gradually absorbed the characteristics of El, becoming the dominant deity of Israel. This process may have been driven by a desire to consolidate religious authority and create a more unified national identity. Some scholars argue that the early Israelites initially worshipped El as their chief deity, but gradually came to identify him with Yahweh, a storm god who may have originated in the southern regions of Canaan. Over time, Yahweh eclipsed El, taking on his epithets, roles, and eventually his supreme status. What implications does this assimilation have on modern religion? Biblical passages also portray Yahweh as a storm god, wielding power over thunder, lightning, and rain, attributes commonly associated with Baal and other storm deities in the ancient Near East. Psalm 18:13-14, for example, describes Yahweh thundering from heaven, with lightning flashing and arrows scattering his enemies. This imagery is strikingly similar to depictions of Baal in Canaanite texts, where he is described as the rider on the clouds who commands the weather. Poetic descriptions of Yahweh's battles against chaotic forces, such as the sea, Yam, further reinforce this connection. These battles echo Baal's mythological conflicts with Yam in Canaanite texts, where Baal defeats the sea god and establishes order in the cosmos. In Psalm 74:13-14, Yahweh is described as breaking the heads of the sea monsters and crushing the heads of Leviathan, a clear parallel to Baal's victory over Yam. Mountains and high places, often considered sacred to storm gods in the ancient Near East, are also associated with Yahweh. Mount Sinai, where Yahweh revealed himself to Moses, is depicted as a stormy, volcanic peak, shrouded in cloud and smoke. What could this parallel imagery mean? Scholarly interpretations of these findings suggest that Yahweh may have inherited or adopted the storm god characteristics of Baal, becoming a more powerful and dynamic deity in the process. This assimilation may have been driven by a desire to appeal to a wider audience and to incorporate popular religious beliefs into the emerging Israelite faith. However, this raises a fundamental question. Did the Israelites simply replace Baal with Yahweh, or was there a deeper transformation at play? Archaeological and textual evidence suggests that Asherah, a prominent Canaanite goddess, was worshipped alongside Yahweh in early Israelite religion. The implications of this co-worship challenge the traditional monotheistic view of Yahweh as a solitary male deity. Inscriptions and artifacts depict Asherah as Yahweh's consort or partner, suggesting a more complex and nuanced understanding of their relationship. At Kuntalit Ajrud, for example, inscriptions were found that refer to Yahweh and his Asherah, raising questions about the nature of their relationship and the extent of syncretism in early Israelite religion. This co-worship, however, would not last. Biblical accounts describe the suppression of Asherah worship and the removal of her symbols from the temple in Jerusalem, highlighting the struggle to establish Yahweh's exclusive dominance. The books of Kings and Chronicles repeatedly condemn the worship of Asherah and describe the efforts of various Israelite kings to eradicate her cult. These accounts suggest that the early Israelite religion may have been more polytheistic or henotheistic than traditionally portrayed, with Yahweh gradually eclipsing Asherah and other deities. Scholarly interpretations of these findings suggest that the early Israelite religion may have been more polytheistic or henotheistic than traditionally portrayed, with Yahweh gradually eclipsing Asherah and other deities. This raises a crucial question. Was the monotheism of the Hebrew Bible a later development, a deliberate effort to purify the faith and establish a distinct national identity? And here is something they don't want you to know. What if Asherah was written out of the texts because she represented a matriarchal past? Now, let us address the counterarguments to this syncretism thesis. One common argument is that Yahweh's identity and uniqueness were divinely revealed to the Israelites, rather than evolving through cultural and religious interactions. However, historical and archaeological evidence suggests a more gradual and syncretic process of religious change in the ancient Near East. Religious narratives, as we have seen, can be shaped by political and social factors, such as the desire to establish a distinct national identity or to consolidate royal power. The syncretism thesis does not necessarily negate the possibility of divine revelation, but rather provides a more nuanced and historically informed understanding of how religious beliefs developed. It suggests that divine revelation may have been interpreted and expressed through the lens of existing cultural and religious traditions. Another common argument is that early Israelite religion was truly monotheistic, even if it acknowledged the existence of other gods. This perspective emphasizes the concept of henotheism, where a single deity is worshipped while acknowledging the existence of other gods. However, evidence suggests that early Israelites acknowledged the existence and power of other deities, even while primarily worshipping Yahweh. The gradual shift from henotheism to monotheism in Israelite religion highlights the role of prophets and religious reformers in promoting the exclusive worship of Yahweh. Figures like Elijah and Isaiah vehemently condemned the worship of other gods and called for a return to the pure worship of Yahweh. However, even if early Israelite religion was henotheistic, the adoption of attributes and epithets from other deities still represents a form of syncretism and assimilation. So the question remains, how do we reconcile the traditional view of Yahweh as a uniquely divine being with the historical evidence of syncretism and assimilation? In summary, the evidence presented throughout this video supports the idea that Yahweh's identity was shaped by cultural and religious interactions in the ancient Near East. Yahweh absorbed attributes and epithets from El, Baal, and Asherah, becoming a more comprehensive and powerful deity in the process. This understanding does not diminish the significance of Yahweh in Western religions, but rather provides a richer and more nuanced understanding of his origins and evolution. What if the story of God is a story of power? The implications of Yahweh's syncretic origins challenge our understanding of monotheism, suggesting that it may not be as distinct from polytheism as traditionally believed. By recognizing the shared roots and syncretic nature of many religious traditions, we can foster a more inclusive and tolerant understanding of religious diversity. Understanding the evolution of Yahweh's identity can help us appreciate the complex and dynamic nature of religious belief. But we're just scratching the surface. What we'll discover next is even more shocking as we delve deeper into how this transformation affected the very core of Western esoteric traditions. What forbidden secrets are hidden within these ancient texts, waiting to be revealed? Having established that Yahweh's identity was significantly shaped through syncretism and assimilation, absorbing attributes from deities like El, Baal, and Asherah, it's crucial to recognize that his transformation involved more than simple adoption. It encompassed a deliberate reshaping of existing myths and traditions, a strategic move to forge a unique identity. This metamorphosis served a dual purpose, distinguishing Yahweh from other deities while simultaneously appropriating their inherent power and authority. But how exactly did this mythological reinterpretation occur, and what does it reveal about the construction of Yahweh's narrative? To understand this transformative process, let us turn our attention to the concept of Chaoskampf, a term derived from the German for struggle against chaos. This motif, deeply embedded in ancient Near Eastern mythology, depicts various storm gods battling primordial forces of chaos. Think of Marduk, the Babylonian storm god, locked in a cosmic struggle with Tiamat, the primordial sea dragon, or Baal, the Canaanite storm god, confronting Yam, the god of the sea. These narratives symbolize the triumph of order over chaos, a theme resonating across cultures. Now, consider how the Hebrew Bible portrays Yahweh. Textual evidence from the Hebrew Bible itself provides intriguing clues that suggest Yahweh, too, engages in a Chaoskampf. Passages such as Psalm 74 depict Yahweh battling chaotic forces, particularly the sea, often referred to as Yam. In this psalm, Yahweh is described as breaking the heads of sea monsters and crushing Leviathan, mirroring Baal's victory over Yam. This narrative echoes the Baal cycle, where Baal defeats Yam to establish cosmic order. Scholarly interpretations of these passages suggest that Yahweh's Chaoskampf narrative was a deliberate reinterpretation of existing myths. By recasting Yahweh as the ultimate victor over chaos, the ancient Israelites may have sought to establish his supremacy over other deities, effectively appropriating the symbolic power inherent in these widespread mythological motifs. Was this simply a case of cultural borrowing, or was there a more profound theological agenda at play? Beyond his role as a storm god battling chaos, Yahweh's portrayal undergoes a significant shift in later biblical texts. We see a transition from a deity primarily associated with controlling weather and waging war to one who is a lawgiver and covenant maker. This is most evident in the accounts of the Ten Commandments and the establishment of the covenant with Israel. But what drove this shift in emphasis? This transformation likely reflected evolving societal needs. As the Israelite people transitioned from nomadic tribes to a more settled agricultural society, the focus shifted from securing agricultural prosperity and military success to establishing social order and ethical behavior. The portrayal of Yahweh as a lawgiver provided a unique moral and legal framework for the Israelite people, further distinguishing them from their neighbors. Consider this: the Ten Commandments, for example, provided a clear set of ethical guidelines and social regulations that governed various aspects of Israelite life. But this shift may also have been driven by political agendas. Scholarly interpretations suggest that the priestly class sought to consolidate their power and enforce religious uniformity by emphasizing Yahweh's laws. By presenting Yahweh as the ultimate source of moral authority, they could legitimize their own power and influence. This raises a crucial question. Was the transformation of Yahweh from a storm god to a lawgiver primarily driven by genuine religious conviction, or was it also influenced by political considerations? Now let's explore the political and social factors that further shaped the development of Yahweh's image. The rise of the Israelite monarchy under kings like David and Solomon played a pivotal role in promoting Yahweh as the primary deity of the kingdom. The construction of the temple in Jerusalem, for example, served as a central place of worship for Yahweh, solidifying his position as the national God of Israel. But this promotion of Yahweh was not without its dark side. Consider this: the destruction of rival temples and the suppression of other cults, such as the worship of Baal and Asherah, were part of a deliberate effort to consolidate religious power. Moreover, the Deuteronomic reforms in the 7th century BCE further centralized the worship of Yahweh in Jerusalem and promoted the idea of monolatry, the worship of one God, without denying the existence of others. These reforms, outlined in the book of Deuteronomy, emphasized the exclusive worship of Yahweh and condemned the worship of other deities. Scholarly interpretations suggest that these political and social factors played a crucial role in shaping the development of monotheism in Israel. Through a gradual process of religious and political centralization, Yahweh emerged as the sole legitimate deity. But here's what most people miss: the shift towards monotheism may have been as much a political strategy as a genuine theological evolution. What they don't want you to know is that consolidating religious power was a crucial step in unifying the kingdom and establishing the authority of the ruling elite. But as above, so below. Let us explore the esoteric interpretations of Yahweh, such as those found in Kabbalah, to gain a deeper appreciation for the symbolic significance of this deity. In Kabbalistic thought, Yahweh is linked to abstract cosmic principles and the divine name, the Tetragrammaton, a 4-letter word that represents the ineffable name of God. This name, often transliterated as YHWH, is considered to be the most sacred name in Judaism, embodying the essence of the divine. The Kabbalistic tree of life represents the emanation of divine attributes, known as Sephirot, from Yahweh. Each Sephirah embodies a different aspect of creation and human consciousness, ranging from Keter, the crown, representing divine will, to Malkuth, the kingdom, representing the material world. Through these Sephirot, we can map the journey of consciousness. The concept of Yahweh as the Ein Sof, the infinite, in Kabbalistic thought, representing the ultimate source of all existence and the unknowable essence of the divine, takes the historical narrative and thrusts it into the realm of cosmic symbolism. These esoteric interpretations offer a more abstract and symbolic understanding of Yahweh, moving beyond the literal and historical narratives of the Hebrew Bible. But what we'll discover next is even more shocking as we delve deeper into how this esoteric understanding connects Yahweh to broader themes of cosmic creation and human potential. What forbidden secrets are hidden within these ancient texts, waiting to be revealed? As we've seen, Yahweh's rise was not merely a matter of acquiring names and attributes. It involved a far more profound and calculated shift in the very fabric of divine authority. What if Yahweh's ascent was less about creation and more about a well-orchestrated takeover? What if the narrative of divine creation was, in fact, a clever rebranding strategy? To truly grasp the magnitude of this transformation, we must recognize that Yahweh's ascendancy involved appropriating specific divine functions and powers previously held by other deities. This transition, particularly concerning judgment and kingship, was essential for establishing Yahweh's supreme authority and solidifying his position as the one true deity of Israel. Understanding this involves appreciating a complex redefinition of divine roles and responsibilities, with Yahweh taking on tasks that were once shared amongst a pantheon of gods. This then sets the stage for our exploration of specific examples, as we now turn to how Yahweh assumed the functions of judgment and kingship from other deities. Let us begin with the concept of judgment, which in the ancient Near East was intrinsically linked to the notion of a divine court. What role did this heavenly bureaucracy play in Yahweh's ascent? The ancient Near East was rife with myths of divine assemblies where gods gathered to make decisions and dispense justice. In Mesopotamian and Canaanite religions, we find elaborate descriptions of such divine courts, often presided over by a high god like El. These courts served as the ultimate arbiters of fate, where disputes were settled and cosmic order was maintained. Now let's consider the Hebrew Bible. It presents a strikingly different picture. Here, Yahweh is portrayed as the sole judge of Israel, presiding over his own divine court. Angels or other celestial beings act as his attendants, carrying out his divine decrees. This portrayal is not merely a shift in personnel. It signifies a complete transformation of the earlier polytheistic concept. Yahweh, in essence, absorbs the functions and authority of all other judges, becoming the ultimate source of justice and law. He isn't just another member of the divine council. He is the divine council. But how does this consolidation of judicial power manifest in specific biblical narratives? Let us turn to the story of the Great Flood for a particularly striking example. The biblical story of the Great Flood, found in Genesis chapters 6 through 9, serves as a powerful example of Yahweh exercising his divine judgment over humanity. Humanity's wickedness has become so great that it threatens the very fabric of creation. As such, Yahweh decides to unleash a cataclysmic flood to cleanse the earth and start anew. Now, if we compare this narrative to similar flood myths in Mesopotamian religion, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, we find striking similarities. Both stories involve a divine decision to destroy humanity due to their wickedness, a chosen individual who is warned of the impending disaster, and the construction of an ark to save a select group of humans and animals. However, there's a crucial difference. In the Mesopotamian versions, the flood is often the result of a collective decision by the gods, some of whom regret their actions. But in the Genesis flood narrative, Yahweh acts alone as the sole source of justice and retribution. The other gods are absent from the narrative, their roles and motivations rendered irrelevant. Thus, the Genesis flood narrative represents a deliberate reinterpretation of existing mythological motifs, recasting Yahweh as the ultimate judge and lawgiver, with the power to punish or reward humanity based on his own moral standards. Is this simply a case of creative storytelling, or does it reflect a more profound shift in theological understanding? Now, shifting our focus from judgment to kingship, let us examine how Yahweh consolidated royal authority. The concept of divine kingship was prevalent throughout the ancient Near East. Rulers were often seen as representatives of the gods on earth, their authority derived from the divine realm. In Mesopotamian and Egyptian religion, for example, pharaohs and kings were considered intermediaries between the gods and the people, responsible for maintaining cosmic order and ensuring the well-being of their kingdoms. However, the Hebrew Bible presents a different perspective. Here, Yahweh is portrayed as the true king of Israel. Earthly rulers serve as his vassals or representatives, subject to his law and will. Kings like David and Solomon are depicted as serving Yahweh, leading his people in accordance with his commandments. This portrayal of Yahweh as the ultimate king represents a transformation of the earlier polytheistic concept of divine kingship. Yahweh, in effect, consolidates all royal authority in his own hands. The earthly king is not divine in himself, but merely an agent of Yahweh's divine rule. What tangible symbols were used to represent this divine kingship? The Ark of the Covenant serves as a powerful example. Presenting the Ark of the Covenant as a physical manifestation of Yahweh's presence and authority, serving as his throne or footstool in the Israelite sanctuary, we must remember that sacred objects were common in the ancient Near East. Many religions had portable shrines that represented the power of their gods, not unlike the Ark of the Covenant. These objects served as focal points for worship and were often associated with military victories and royal power. The Ark of the Covenant was no different. In the Hebrew Bible, it is depicted as being carried into battle, leading the Israelites to victory. It was also housed in the temple in Jerusalem, the center of Israelite religious and political life. This suggests that the Ark of the Covenant served as a symbol of Yahweh's kingship, reinforcing his authority and legitimacy as the supreme ruler of Israel. Through this symbol, Yahweh's divine kingship was made manifest. But what were the broader political implications of this concept? The portrayal of Yahweh as both judge and king served to legitimize the authority of the Israelite monarchy. Rulers claimed to act on Yahweh's behalf, enforcing his laws and carrying out his will. The prophetic tradition in the Hebrew Bible often challenged the actions of kings who were seen as violating Yahweh's covenant or neglecting his commands. This created a tension between royal power and divine authority, with the prophets serving as a check on the excesses of the monarchy. The concept of a divine mandate, where rulers were believed to be chosen by Yahweh to govern his people, was used to justify royal power and maintain social order. This idea is evident in the stories of David and Solomon, who were both anointed by prophets and declared to be Yahweh's chosen rulers. Thus, the transformation of Yahweh into the ultimate judge and king was closely linked to the political and social developments in ancient Israel, with religious beliefs being used to support and reinforce existing power structures. It served as a theological justification for political power. In summary, the evidence we have surveyed reveals that Yahweh's transformation involved not only assimilating attributes, but also absorbing divine functions and powers from other deities. This transformation served to establish Yahweh's authority as the supreme deity of Israel, with control over judgment, kingship, and other essential aspects of divine governance. Understanding this transformation requires a critical examination of the power dynamics at play in ancient Israelite society, with religious beliefs being shaped by political and social agendas. But we're just scratching the surface. Now prepare yourself for a shift in perspective as we transition from historical and political analysis to the symbolic and mystical dimensions of Yahweh's identity. What we will uncover next is even more shocking. The esoteric interpretations of Yahweh reveal alternative narratives, linking him to broader themes of cosmic creation, human consciousness, and spiritual evolution. What if Yahweh's story isn't just about one God rising to power, but about a deeper, more universal process of transformation? Understanding these esoteric interpretations may offer a deeper and more nuanced appreciation of Yahweh's significance in Western religions and spiritual traditions. What secrets lie hidden beneath the surface of these ancient stories, waiting to be revealed? The narrative of Yahweh's ascendancy is not solely a tale of assimilation and transformation. It is also a story of deliberate exclusion, where dominance was achieved through the systematic suppression of alternative religious beliefs, practices, and narratives. The establishment of Yahweh as the sole legitimate deity was inextricably intertwined with the marginalization and demonization of other gods and their worshippers, a calculated strategy designed to consolidate power and enforce religious uniformity. What were the true costs of this divine consolidation? What voices were silenced in the process? This suppression often involved the destruction of rival temples, the violent persecution of religious dissenters, and the calculated rewriting of history to erase alternative perspectives. Archaeological evidence reveals the destruction of temples dedicated to other deities, and biblical texts themselves often contain condemnations of those who worshipped gods other than Yahweh. This wasn't simply a matter of theological disagreement. It was a power struggle with real-world consequences, where religious beliefs were used to justify violence and oppression. But what specific examples of suppressed texts and traditions offer alternative perspectives on Yahweh's nature and origins, challenging the official narrative? To answer that, we must first consider the concept of heresiography, the writing about heresies. This was a powerful tool used to define orthodoxy and marginalize dissenting voices. In ancient Israel, heresiography served to demonize rival religious beliefs and practices, portraying them as dangerous deviations from the true worship of Yahweh. How did these texts influence the perception of alternative religious beliefs? The Hebrew Bible itself contains examples of heresiographical texts, such as passages that condemn the worship of Baal, Asherah, and other foreign gods. These passages are not merely descriptive. They are polemical, designed to construct a negative image of alternative religious beliefs and practices. Baal, for example, is often portrayed as a false god who leads the Israelites astray, while Asherah, a prominent goddess in the ancient Near East, is associated with idolatry and sexual immorality. By demonizing these deities and their worshippers, the authors of these texts reinforced the idea that Yahweh was the only true God and that all other deities were false and demonic. But what happens when we examine texts excluded from the canon? Consider the Book of Enoch, an example of a Jewish apocryphal text that was excluded from the Hebrew Bible and later suppressed by rabbinic authorities. This ancient text, attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, offers a radically different perspective on the origins of evil and the nature of divine authority. Why was this text cast into the shadows? What secrets did it hold that threatened the established order? The Book of Enoch recounts the story of the Watchers, fallen angels who descended to earth and interbred with humans, producing a race of giants. These Watchers are said to have taught humans forbidden knowledge, such as metallurgy, astrology, and magic, leading to corruption and chaos on earth. This narrative offers a different perspective on the origins of evil, suggesting that it is not solely the result of human disobedience, but also the consequence of divine transgression. Moreover, the Book of Enoch portrays divine beings who are not entirely benevolent or just, challenging the traditional monotheistic view of Yahweh as the sole source of goodness and justice. Its alternative cosmogony and its portrayal of divine beings may have threatened the authority of the priestly class and the established religious order. But the suppression of alternative narratives wasn't the end of the story. As it turns out, esoteric interpretations of Yahweh persisted, offering a richer, more nuanced understanding of the divine. Let's turn our attention to Kabbalah, a tradition of Jewish mysticism that offers an esoteric interpretation of Yahweh and his relationship to the cosmos. What hidden dimensions of the divine does Kabbalah reveal? Kabbalah uses symbolic language and mystical techniques to explore the hidden dimensions of the divine, revealing a more complex and nuanced understanding of Yahweh's nature. Rather than viewing Yahweh as a distant and unknowable God, Kabbalah sees him as a dynamic and multifaceted being whose essence can be experienced through mystical practice. The concept of the Sephirot, representing the 10 emanations or attributes of Yahweh through which the divine manifests in the world, is central to this understanding. Using the Tree of Life as a guide, these emanations reveal a roadmap for understanding the cosmos, the self, and the divine. But how does this perspective challenge the traditional monolithic narrative of Yahweh? Kabbalah, with its complex system of emanations and symbolic interpretations, challenges the traditional monolithic narrative of Yahweh as a singular, unchanging entity. The Kabbalistic concept of Ein Sof, the infinite, suggests that Yahweh is ultimately unknowable and beyond human comprehension, challenging the idea of a fully defined and anthropomorphic deity. Moreover, Kabbalistic practices, such as meditation and contemplation, aim to achieve a direct experience of the divine, bypassing the need for intermediaries or institutionalized religion. The Kabbalah invites individuals to engage in their own spiritual exploration and discover their own unique connection to the divine, thus offering a more dynamic and personal understanding of Yahweh. How does this direct experience impact the seeker? Furthermore, Kabbalah incorporates elements from other esoteric traditions, such as Hermeticism, Gnosticism, and Neoplatonism, further blurring the boundaries between different religious and philosophical systems. Angels, demons, and other spiritual entities from various traditions are integrated into its complex cosmology and magical practices. This syncretic nature reflects the broader historical and cultural context in which Kabbalah developed, with Jewish mystics drawing on a wide range of sources to enrich their understanding of the divine. This challenges the notion of religious purity and exclusivity, suggesting that different spiritual traditions can inform and enrich one another. But how was this syncretism viewed by mainstream religious authorities? Kabbalah has often been viewed with suspicion and even hostility by mainstream religious authorities due to its esoteric nature and its potential to challenge traditional doctrines. The persecution of Kabbalists throughout history highlights the dangers of religious dissent and the suppression of alternative spiritual perspectives. The marginalization of Kabbalah has contributed to its mystique and allure, attracting spiritual seekers who are drawn to its hidden wisdom and transformative potential. The history of Kabbalah serves as a reminder of the importance of religious freedom and the need to protect alternative spiritual traditions from persecution and suppression. Is this persecution the reason for the esoteric nature of Kabbalah? In summary, the evidence we have surveyed reveals that Yahweh's identity was shaped not only by assimilation and transformation, but also by the suppression of alternative narratives and the emergence of esoteric interpretations. The exclusion of texts like the Book of Enoch and the marginalization of traditions like Kabbalah have contributed to a limited and distorted understanding of Yahweh's nature and origins. To gain a more complete and nuanced appreciation of religious history and spiritual evolution, it is essential to consider alternative viewpoints and challenge dominant narratives. What awaits us, then, when we investigate Yahweh's divine name? Prepare yourself, for we are about to embark on a deeper exploration of the esoteric dimensions of Yahweh's identity. The video will now turn to an analysis of the symbolic and mystical meanings associated with his divine name. Understanding the esoteric dimensions of Yahweh's identity can offer a new perspective on the nature of God, the cosmos, and the human potential for spiritual growth. But we're just scratching the surface. What transformative potential lies dormant within this esoteric knowledge, waiting to be awakened? Could it be that the very name of God, so carefully guarded and revered, holds a key not just to understanding the divine, but to unlocking our own hidden potential? In esoteric traditions, names are far more than mere labels. They are vibrational keys, echoing with the power to shape reality itself. What secrets, then, lie dormant within the sacred name of Yahweh? Our exploration of Yahweh's name is akin to peeling back layers of an ancient, multi-dimensional tapestry, each thread revealing a new facet of the divine essence. We're not merely engaging in theological exercise. We're embarking on a journey into the heart of mystical understanding, venturing beyond conventional religious interpretations to glimpse the hidden architecture of the cosmos. By understanding the esoteric significance of Yahweh's name, we can, according to these traditions, foster a deeper connection to the divine, unlock transformative spiritual insights, and perhaps even gain access to the very blueprint of creation. So, let's begin to prepare for a deeper exploration of the Hebrew alphabet, the mystical traditions surrounding it, and potent methods like gematria. Within mystical traditions, sacred names are not simply identifiers, but potent embodiments of the divine, resonating with the very essence and power they represent. These names, often revealed through divine inspiration or profound mystical insight, are believed to carry within them the vibrational signature of the cosmos itself. Consider the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, the four-letter name of God in the Hebrew tradition, a name so sacred that its true pronunciation has been lost to time, deliberately concealed by those who understood its immense power. This name, whispered in hushed tones by Kabbalists and mystics throughout the ages, is not merely a word. It is a key, a portal, a map to the hidden realms of divine being. But what does it truly mean to say that a name has vibrational power? To understand this concept, we must delve into the esoteric understanding of vibration, which suggests that everything in the universe, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, vibrates at a specific frequency. Names and words, imbued with intention and meaning, also possess specific frequencies that can influence consciousness and reality. By understanding and utilizing the vibrational power of sacred names, individuals can, it is believed, attune themselves to higher states of awareness, harmonize with the cosmic order, and even manifest their spiritual potential. What specific techniques, then, can unlock this vibrational power, and how do we ensure that we wield it with wisdom and reverence? Let us now turn our attention to the Tetragrammaton itself. Hebrew Yod, Hebrew He, Hebrew Vav, Hebrew He. Composed of 4 Hebrew letters Yod, Hebrew Yod, Heh, Hebrew He, Vav, Hebrew Vav, and Heh, Hebrew He. Each letter carries profound symbolic meaning, adding layers of complexity to the name's overall significance. The Yod, Hebrew Yod, the smallest letter, is often associated with the divine spark, the point of origin from which all creation emanates. The first Heh, Hebrew He, represents the Divine Mother, the womb of creation, the source of understanding and compassion. The Vav, Hebrew Vav, acts as a bridge, connecting the Yod and the Heh, representing the Sun, the principle of manifestation and harmony. Finally, the second Heh, Hebrew He, mirrors the first, representing the daughter, the culmination of the creative process, the realm of physical existence. What happens then when these letters are combined, and what does their structure tell us about the nature of the divine? The historical debates and mystical interpretations surrounding the proper pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton only deepen its mystery and significance. The original pronunciation, once known to the ancient priests of the temple in Jerusalem, has been lost or deliberately concealed, shrouded in secrecy and reverence. Various substitute names or titles, such as Adonai Lord and Elohim God, are used to refer to God in Jewish tradition, each reflecting a different aspect of the divine. This unpronounceability reinforces its transcendence, suggesting that the divine essence is ultimately beyond human comprehension, that the true nature of God cannot be captured or contained by human language. If this name cannot be spoken, can its power still be accessed? Consider now the ancient practice of gematria, a Kabbalistic method of interpreting texts by assigning numerical values to Hebrew letters. Each letter corresponds to a number Aleph 1, Bet 2, etc., and by calculating the numerical value of words and phrases, hidden connections and deeper meanings can be revealed. Seemingly unrelated ideas may share a deeper underlying meaning, bound together by a common numerical value. How can we apply this method to the Tetragrammaton? When gematria is applied to the Tetragrammaton, its numerical value is calculated by adding the values of each letter. Yod 10, Heh 5, Vav 6, Heh 5, 26. This number, 26, holds profound symbolic significance in Kabbalah, representing the union of opposites, the reconciliation of male and female principles, and the dynamic interplay of divine forces. But this is only the beginning. Gematria can be used to uncover hidden messages and prophecies within the Hebrew Bible, revealing the esoteric dimensions of sacred texts and challenging conventional interpretations. Could the very structure of the Bible be encoded with secret knowledge waiting to be unlocked? Let us now connect the Tetragrammaton to the Kabbalistic tree of life, a map of the 10 Sephirot, or divine attributes, through which the Godhead manifests in the world. Each letter of the Tetragrammaton is associated with a specific Sephirah, revealing the dynamic interplay of divine attributes within the Godhead. The Yod, Hebrew Yod, is associated with Chokmah, wisdom, the first Heh, Hebrew He, with Binah, understanding, the Vav, Hebrew Vav, with Tiferet, beauty, and the final Heh, Hebrew He, with Malkuth, kingdom. What does this association reveal about the nature of Yahweh, and how can it inform our understanding of the cosmos? This association reveals that Yahweh is not a static entity, but a dynamic process of continuous creation and manifestation, constantly unfolding and evolving. Meditating on the Tetragrammaton and its connection to the Tree of Life can facilitate a deeper understanding of the divine, promote personal spiritual growth, and allow us to align ourselves with the cosmic flow. By contemplating these associations, we can gain access to the hidden architecture of reality, glimpse the divine blueprint upon which all of creation is based and begin to unlock our own potential for spiritual transformation. How do we take this knowledge and apply it to our own lives? Let's expand on the concept of the Tetragrammaton as the very source of creation, a divine blueprint encoded in 4 letters, each linked to the fundamental elements, cardinal directions, and core principles that structure our universe. The 4 letters can be seen as representing fire, Yod, water, Heh, air, Vav, and earth, Heh, reflecting the elemental foundations upon which all of existence is built. This elemental association helps us to see the Tetragrammaton as not just a name, but as a code for understanding the very building blocks of reality. How does this relate to the structure of the cosmos? In addition, the Tetragrammaton can also be associated with the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, each direction representing a different aspect of the divine and a different stage in the creative process. The Yod, associated with fire, is linked to the south, representing passion, energy, and the initial spark of creation. The first Heh, associated with water, is linked to the west, representing emotion, intuition, and the womb of potential. The Vav, associated with air, is linked to the east, representing intellect, communication, and the manifestation of ideas. And the final Heh, associated with earth, is linked to the north, representing stability, grounding, and the culmination of the creative process in the physical world. Understanding these elemental and directional associations allows us to see how the Tetragrammaton embodies the totality of existence, reflecting the divine blueprint upon which all of creation is patterned. What implications does this have for us as beings within this creation? Building upon this foundation, let us explore the connection between the Tetragrammaton and the concept of Adam Kadmon in Kabbalah. Adam Kadmon, often translated as primordial man, represents the archetypal human being, existing before physical form, a blueprint for humanity encoded with the very essence of the divine. He is the divine made manifest in the human form. But what does this mean for the Tetragrammaton and its connection to humanity? Adam Kadmon embodies all of the Sephirot and qualities of the divine as manifest in human form, each aspect of his being reflecting a different attribute of God. In this view, the Tetragrammaton can be seen as the divine code within each human being, representing the potential for spiritual awakening and self-realization, and suggesting that within each of us lies the spark of divinity, waiting to be ignited. When we view ourselves through this lens, we understand that our very being is a reflection of the divine, a microcosm of the macrocosm. How then can we activate this divine code within ourselves, and what practices can help us unlock our spiritual potential? Moving from theoretical analysis to practical application, let us explore how the Tetragrammaton is used in esoteric rituals and practices. Kabbalists and other mystics invoke the divine name to access divine power, achieve altered states of consciousness, and facilitate spiritual transformation. Specific techniques, such as chanting, meditation, and visualization, are used to activate the vibrational power of the Tetragrammaton within the self, aligning the individual with the divine will and opening the doors to mystical experience. But what are the ethical considerations involved in these practices, and how do we ensure that we are approaching the divine name with the proper reverence and respect? It is essential to emphasize the importance of ethical considerations and proper preparation when engaging in these practices. The divine name should be treated with reverence and respect, not as a tool for personal gain or manipulation, but as a sacred key to unlock our own potential for spiritual growth and service to others. Without the proper intention, these practices can be misused, leading to spiritual imbalance or even harm. As we delve deeper into these esoteric practices, it's natural to wonder what could happen if this knowledge were to fall into the wrong hands. In summary, our esoteric analysis of Yahweh's name has revealed its symbolic, numerical, and vibrational significance, highlighting its potential to offer a more profound connection to the divine. unlock transformative spiritual insights and reveal the hidden dimensions of reality. Understanding the Tetragrammaton can empower us to access our own inner potential, aligning ourselves with the cosmic flow and fostering a deeper connection to the divine. By embracing this esoteric knowledge, we can embark on a journey of personal spiritual practice, inner exploration, and communion with a higher ideal. But we have only scratched the surface. The most significant connections and revelations are yet to be made. So what happens when we compare and contrast the hidden name of Yahweh with the names of other gods? As we've seen, the Tetragrammaton isn't merely a name, but a key to unlocking the very blueprint of creation, and when properly intoned, can open the doorways to enlightenment. But what happens when we move beyond theoretical contemplation and actively engage with the divine through ritual and practice? The answer, according to esoteric traditions, lies in the realm of practical Kabbalah, also known as theurgy, a system of ritual practices aimed at achieving direct communion with the divine, a pursuit far exceeding mere intellectual understanding. Can these practices truly bring us closer to Yahweh, or are we veering into dangerous territory? Practical Kabbalah is not a passive study, but an active engagement with the spiritual realm, a theurgic ascent through the tree of life, ultimately seeking union with the divine source, Yahweh. This involves a dynamic interplay with the energies of the Sephirot, the divine emanations that structure the cosmos. Through ritual, invocation, and other techniques, practitioners seek to manipulate these energies, striving for specific spiritual objectives, such as healing, protection, or enlightenment. The Tetragrammaton itself becomes a focal point for these practices, its divine name intoned and visualized as a pathway toward union. But how exactly do these techniques work, and what is the relationship between these energetic manipulations and the figure of Yahweh? The techniques of practical Kabbalah center around invocation, evocation, and meditation, each serving as a unique tool for manipulating spiritual energies. Invocation involves calling upon divine forces, drawing them into oneself or into a ritual space. Evocation, on the other hand, involves commanding spiritual entities, directing them to perform specific tasks. Meditation, a crucial component, involves achieving altered states of consciousness, allowing practitioners to perceive and interact with the spiritual realm. These techniques are not arbitrary, they are carefully designed to interact with the energies of the Sephirot on the tree of life, creating a dynamic flow of divine power. What role do physical objects play in these rituals? Ritual tools and symbolic objects play a vital role in practical Kabbalah, acting as conduits and amplifiers of spiritual energy. The Kabbalistic dagger, for example, is used to direct and focus intent, cutting through negative influences and establishing boundaries. The cup, often associated with the element of water, symbolizes receptivity and the divine feminine. The wand, associated with fire, represents the will and the divine masculine. The pentacle, a symbol of the microcosm, represents the practitioner's connection to the earthly realm. These tools are not merely decorative. They are imbued with esoteric significance, acting as keys to unlock the hidden dimensions of reality. Do these physical objects serve as training wheels or as something more meaningful? Ultimately, the goal of these techniques is to facilitate a direct experience of the divine, bypassing the need for intermediaries or institutionalized religion. Practical Kabbalists seek to establish a personal relationship with Yahweh, not through dogma or doctrine, but through direct, experiential knowledge. This approach challenges the conventional notion of a distant, unknowable God, instead presenting Yahweh as an accessible force, a wellspring of infinite potential available to those who dare to seek it. But if there are no intermediaries, where do angels fit into this system? In Kabbalistic cosmology, angels and archangels act as divine messengers, intermediaries between the human and divine realms, cosmic forces that govern the unfolding of creation. Each sephira on the tree of life is associated with specific angels and archangels, each embodying a different aspect of the divine. Metatron, for example, is associated with Kether, the crown, the highest Sephira, and represents the divine will. Raziel is associated with Chokmah, wisdom, and embodies divine knowledge. Tzadkiel is associated with Hesed, mercy, and embodies divine compassion. By invoking these angels and archangels, practitioners of practical Kabbalah seek to access divine power and guidance, facilitating their own spiritual transformation. But what are the rules of engagement? Invoking these celestial beings requires not only knowledge, but also reverence, respect, and proper intention. The angels and archangels are not mere servants to be commanded, but powerful forces to be approached with humility and gratitude. Ethical considerations are paramount, as the misuse of divine power can lead to spiritual imbalance or even harm. Only those who are pure of heart and dedicated to the service of the divine should attempt to work with these forces. But what happens when this careful balance is disrupted, and what dangers lurk in the shadows of the tree of life? While practical Kabbalah offers a path to divine union, it also presents potential dangers, including the risk of attracting negative spiritual entities and disrupting one's spiritual balance. The Kabbalistic concept of Kulipoth, or shells, represents the negative aspects of the Sephirot, the unbalanced forces that dwell in the shadows of the tree of life. These Kulipoth are associated with demonic forces, entities that seek to disrupt and corrupt the divine order. Without proper training, guidance, and ethical conduct, practitioners can inadvertently open themselves up to these negative influences, leading to psychological and spiritual consequences. How can one protect themselves from these dangers? Engaging in advanced magical practices without adequate preparation or supervision can lead to ego inflation, a distorted sense of self-importance, and a disconnect from reality. It is vital to approach these practices with humility, discernment, and a strong ethical foundation, seeking guidance from experienced mentors and adhering to strict moral principles. The path to divine union is not a shortcut to power or enlightenment, but a long and arduous journey that requires dedication, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. But who throughout history has successfully navigated this perilous path, and what can we learn from their experiences? Isaac Luria, a 16th-century Kabbalist, stands as a pivotal figure in the development of practical Kabbalah, his teachings revolutionizing Kabbalistic theory and practice. Luria introduced the concept of Tzimtzum, or divine contraction, explaining that God contracted his infinite light to create space for the universe. This contraction, however, resulted in Shevarat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, scattering shards of divine light throughout creation. Luria then emphasized the importance of Tikkun Olam, the repair of the world, believing that human actions could restore the divine order and hasten the coming of the Messiah. How did Luria's teachings shape the landscape of practical Kabbalah? Luria's teachings emphasized the active role of humanity in the cosmic drama, imbuing human actions with profound spiritual significance. Through ritual and contemplation, individuals could gather the scattered sparks of divine light, contributing to the Tikkun Olam and accelerating the Messianic age. This emphasis on human agency transformed Kabbalah from a theoretical system into a practical path of spiritual activism, inspiring generations of Kabbalists to engage with the world and strive for its betterment. But Luria was not the only one to shape the landscape of practical Kabbalah, so let's consider more modern examples. Returning to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, we find a modern example of practical Kabbalah integrated with other esoteric traditions, such as Hermeticism, Rosicrucianism, and Enochian magic. The Golden Dawn developed a complex system of ritual magic, employing specific techniques, tools, and symbols to invoke divine forces and achieve spiritual transformation. The Tetragrammaton held a central place in their practices, seen as a key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. But how did they use this ancient name in their rituals? The Golden Dawn viewed the Tree of Life as a map of consciousness, a framework for exploring the hidden dimensions of the self. Through ritual and meditation, members sought to ascend the tree, traversing the pathways between the Sephirot and encountering the divine forces associated with each sphere. The Tetragrammaton was used as a mantra, a vibrational key to unlock the energies of each Sephira, facilitating direct communication with the divine. This system of ritual magic, though complex and demanding, offered a structured path to personal spiritual growth, drawing seekers into a world of symbolic meaning and transformative power. But the Golden Dawn's syncretic approach did not stop there. Hermetic Kabbalists sought to synthesize Kabbalah with other esoteric traditions, such as Hermeticism, alchemy, and astrology, in an attempt to create a more comprehensive understanding of the divine and the cosmos. This syncretism led to a broader perspective, revealing connections between seemingly disparate systems of thought, a way of seeing the hidden unity beneath the surface of reality. But what drove this pursuit of synthesis, and how did it shape their understanding of Yahweh? By weaving together different threads of ancient wisdom, Hermetic Kabbalists sought to uncover the underlying principles that govern the universe, viewing the Tetragrammaton as a key to unlocking these secrets. They saw the divine name as a symbol of the divine creative force that permeates all of existence, a force that could be accessed and harnessed through proper understanding and application. This syncretic approach allowed them to develop a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of spirituality, embracing the richness and diversity of the esoteric tradition. But such a liberal interpretation and implementation is not without its detractors. Despite its potential benefits, practical Kabbalah faces criticisms, particularly from rationalists and those adhering to stricter, more orthodox interpretations of the source religions. Critics often argue that the use of physical implements and the act of commanding spiritual beings veer dangerously close to idolatry, detracting from the true nature of the divine. The anthropomorphic descriptions of God and the elaborate rituals can be seen as a form of reducing the infinite to the finite, undermining the very essence of transcendence. Is there validity to these claims? Furthermore, the potential for magical practices to lead to ego inflation and a distorted sense of self-importance raises concerns about the ethical implications of practical Kabbalah. Humility and selflessness are often considered essential for spiritual growth, and the pursuit of magical power can undermine these virtues, leading to spiritual imbalance and a disconnect from reality. It is important to approach these practices with caution, discernment, and a strong ethical foundation, recognizing the potential pitfalls and striving to maintain a balanced perspective. In summary, our exploration of practical Kabbalah has revealed both its transformative potential and its inherent risks. It involves active engagement with the spiritual realm through ritual, invocation, and other techniques, seeking to ascend the tree of life and unite with the divine source, Yahweh. Yet, as we've seen, this path is not without its perils, requiring careful preparation, ethical conduct, and a deep understanding of the forces at play. So where does this leave us in our quest to understand the origins of Yahweh? As we turn our attention to the practical applications of these beliefs in a larger global historical context, what we will uncover will surely challenge everything you thought you knew. But the implications of practical Kabbalah reach far beyond the individual, extending into the very fabric of our shared reality, a subtle but pervasive influence that has shaped the course of history itself. Is it possible that the seemingly abstract concepts and practices of Kabbalah have actually played a tangible role in global events, influencing political, social, and cultural developments? Practical Kabbalah, while often confined to the realms of personal spiritual practice, has, throughout history, exerted an influence far beyond the individual seeker. Through its principles, archetypes, and symbolism, Kabbalah has touched and even shaped key historical movements. As we explore these connections, it's important to acknowledge that some of these links are speculative, that they are built on interpretations and inferences rather than direct, irrefutable evidence. We must approach this exploration with critical analysis, careful consideration of historical context, and a healthy dose of intellectual humility. However, what if the very foundations of our modern world are intertwined with the hidden wisdom of the Kabbalah? Let's begin our journey through time and see if we can uncover the subtle threads that connect esoteric thought with the unfolding of history. One of the most significant periods of Kabbalistic influence is undoubtedly the Renaissance, that remarkable era of intellectual and artistic flourishing that swept across Europe. You'll recall that the rediscovery of Hermetic texts during this time ignited a profound shift in Western thought, challenging established dogmas and sparking a renewed interest in ancient wisdom. Figures like Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, a brilliant and audacious Renaissance philosopher, played a pivotal role in integrating Kabbalah with other philosophical and religious traditions. But what made Pico's approach so revolutionary? Pico, deeply influenced by the Hermetic revival, believed that Kabbalah held the key to unlocking a universal wisdom, a common thread that ran through all religions and philosophies. His 900 Theses, a bold attempt to synthesize diverse schools of thought, included a strong defense of Kabbalah as a legitimate and valuable source of knowledge. This challenge to the established intellectual order, particularly the dominance of Aristotelian scholasticism, contributed to a new era of religious and philosophical exploration, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable thought. Did Pico's work leave a lasting impact? The influence of Kabbalah during the Renaissance extended beyond philosophical circles, permeating art, literature, and science. Artists and writers, inspired by Kabbalistic symbolism and allegory, infused their works with hidden meanings and deeper layers of interpretation. Scientists seeking to understand the hidden dimensions of reality turned to Kabbalah as a framework for exploring the interconnectedness of all things. This renewed interest in symbolism, allegory, and the hidden dimensions of reality fostered a new appreciation for the power of the human mind and its ability to unlock the secrets of the universe. But this was just the beginning, and Kabbalistic thought was about to enter a new phase of influence through a mysterious and secretive order, one with roots stretching back centuries. Emerging in the early 17th century, Rosicrucianism represented a secretive and influential esoteric movement, one deeply intertwined with the principles of Kabbalah. The Rosicrucians, shrouded in mystery and legend, sought nothing less than a universal reformation of society, believing that the application of esoteric knowledge and spiritual principles could usher in a new golden age. The Rosicrucian manifestos, such as the Fama Fraternitatis and the Confessio Fraternitatis, served as cryptic pronouncements of their aims, drawing heavily on Kabbalistic symbolism and cosmology. What were the core tenets of this movement? The Rosicrucians envisioned a world transformed by the application of esoteric wisdom, where science, religion, and art were harmoniously integrated, and where humanity lived in accordance with divine law. Their manifestos, filled with alchemical metaphors, astrological symbolism, and Kabbalistic imagery, served as a call to arms for those seeking a deeper understanding of the universe and their place within it. The impact of Rosicrucianism extended far beyond its immediate circle, influencing the development of Freemasonry and other secret societies, contributing to a vast network of interconnected esoteric traditions that continue to resonate today. But could this secretive group also impact architecture and civil engineering? Freemasonry, a fraternal organization with roots in the stonemasons' guilds of medieval Europe, adopted Kabbalistic symbolism and ritual practices, integrating them into their own unique system of moral and spiritual instruction. Freemasonic lodges used the symbolism of Solomon's Temple, a potent image of spiritual and material perfection, and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life to teach moral and spiritual lessons, guiding their members towards self-improvement and the pursuit of higher knowledge. How could such a seemingly benign system influence revolutions? Freemasonry's influence extended far beyond the confines of its lodges, playing a significant role in the Enlightenment and the development of democratic ideals. Freemasonic principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity resonated deeply with the revolutionary spirit of the age, influencing the American and French revolutions. The Freemasons, drawing inspiration from Kabbalistic concepts of harmony, balance, and the interconnectedness of all things, advocated for a society based on reason, justice, and the inherent dignity of every individual. As the old regimes crumbled, could esoteric principles have provided a blueprint for a new social order? It has been suggested by some historians and esoteric scholars that the French Revolution, 1789-1799, was, at least in part, influenced by esoteric societies, philosophies, and ideals, a controversial thesis that sparks debate to this day. Key individuals and groups allegedly combined Kabbalistic and Masonic elements with revolutionary political objectives, seeking to transform French society according to esoteric principles. But is there concrete evidence to support such claims? The symbology used during the French Revolution, such as the all-seeing eye, the Phrygian cap, and the concept of liberty, equality, fraternity, can be interpreted through a Kabbalistic lens. Some researchers argue that these symbols, borrowed from esoteric traditions, served as a visual language that communicated hidden meanings and revolutionary ideals. While the extent of esoteric influence on the French Revolution remains a subject of debate, the presence of these symbols suggests a connection, however tenuous, between esoteric thought and political upheaval. But what if the revolution was simply an explosion of social unrest and not a deliberate manifestation of esoteric principles? It is important to acknowledge the counterarguments and debates surrounding the alleged esoteric influence on the French Revolution. Many historians argue that the revolution was primarily driven by social, economic, and political factors, such as inequality, poverty, and the abuse of power by the monarchy. They view the presence of esoteric symbols as mere coincidence or as a superficial adoption of fashionable imagery. While the debate continues, let us turn our attention to another influential society and how it was said to influence global affairs. The Theosophical Society, founded in 1875, represents a key organization in the revival of esoteric thought in the 19th and 20th centuries, a bridge between Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. Theosophical leaders like Helena Blavatsky, a charismatic and controversial figure, drew on Kabbalistic concepts along with Eastern philosophies to develop a new synthesis of esoteric wisdom, a blend of ancient and modern thought that resonated with seekers around the world. How did Blavatsky manage to bring so many disparate schools of thought together? The Theosophical Society's influence extended far beyond the realm of esoteric thought, impacting the development of modern spirituality, including its emphasis on universal brotherhood, spiritual evolution, and the exploration of consciousness. The Society's teachings influenced various social and political movements, such as the women's suffrage movement and the anti-colonial movement in India, inspiring individuals to fight for social justice and equality. Theosophy's message of unity and spiritual evolution provided a framework for addressing the challenges of a rapidly changing world. But even that esoteric synthesis would be tested by new figures. Aleister Crowley, a controversial figure who played a significant role in popularizing Kabbalah, integrated it with his own system of magic, with a K, reshaping the landscape of modern occultism. Crowley's teachings, particularly in Liber 777 and other works, systematized the correspondences between Kabbalistic concepts, tarot symbolism, and various occult traditions, creating a comprehensive framework for magical practice. But what made Crowley's approach to Kabbalah so unique? Crowley's redefinition of magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will reflected Kabbalistic concepts of divine power and human potential. He believed that individuals could harness the forces of the universe to achieve their goals and transform themselves into higher beings, a bold and audacious vision that challenged conventional notions of morality and spirituality. However, Crowley's teachings also drew criticism for their emphasis on self-will and their potential for misuse. And what if misuse led to darkness? The topic of alleged esoteric influences within the Nazi regime remains controversial, a complex and debated area of historical research. The Thule Society and other occult groups associated with early Nazi leaders expressed interest in ancient Aryan mythology, esoteric symbolism, and the concept of a master race. Did this esoteric knowledge influence political goals? Some historians argue that these esoteric ideas contributed to the Nazi ideology of racial superiority and their pursuit of world domination. They believe that the Nazis manipulated esoteric symbols and concepts to justify their actions and to create a sense of mystique around their regime. While the extent of esoteric influence on the Nazi regime remains a subject of debate, it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of misinterpreting or manipulating esoteric knowledge for political purposes. But how can this knowledge be ethically responsible? We must emphasize the ethical responsibility of those who engage with these traditions. As our survey has revealed, the line between enlightenment and delusion, between empowerment and manipulation, is often blurred. The history of practical Kabbalah's influence on global events is a testament to its power, but also a reminder of the importance of approaching esoteric knowledge with caution, discernment, and an unwavering commitment to the highest ethical principles. So as we come to the end of this exploration, we can see that practical Kabbalah has exerted a tangible impact on historical and global events, shaping political, social, and cultural developments across centuries. From the Renaissance to the present day, individuals and movements inspired by Kabbalistic concepts and practices have left their mark on the world, for better or for worse. But have we truly grasped the full extent of its influence? And as we continue to explore the esoteric origins of Yahweh, what other hidden connections will we uncover? Prepare yourselves, for what we'll discover next will challenge everything you thought you knew about the foundations of Western civilization. As we've seen, Kabbalah has demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt and endure throughout history, weaving its way through diverse cultures and intellectual movements, a testament to its profound insights and enduring appeal. But what is it about this ancient system of wisdom that allows it to remain relevant in a world that is constantly changing? A world increasingly dominated by technology, social upheaval, and environmental crisis. Perhaps Kabbalah's continued relevance stems from its ability to offer a comprehensive framework for understanding the complexities of existence, a framework that can be applied to a wide range of issues, from the personal to the global. Kabbalah is a system of wisdom and knowledge that speaks to the deepest human longings for meaning, purpose, and connection, especially in an increasingly fragmented and uncertain world. The very nature of this system allows for a continuous reinterpretation of the nature of reality. But how exactly is Kabbalah being applied and reinterpreted in the 21st century, and what new insights can it offer us as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of the modern world? Let us now turn our attention to one of the most transformative forces of our time, technology, and particularly the rise of artificial intelligence and the expanding digital realm. Can Kabbalah, a system rooted in ancient wisdom and mystical insights, offer any meaningful guidance as we grapple with the ethical, philosophical, and spiritual implications of these rapidly evolving technologies? Indeed, Kabbalistic concepts, such as the Tree of Life with its intricate network of interconnected sephirot, can be seen as a model for understanding the complex systems and networks that underpin the digital world. Each sephira, representing a different aspect of the divine and human experience, can be mapped onto the various components and functions of digital technology, from the hardware and software to the algorithms and data flows. Might we not see Keter, the crown, as representing the overarching architecture of the Internet, while Malkuth, the kingdom, represents the physical devices through which we access it? Furthermore, the potential for AI to enhance our understanding of consciousness and the nature of the divine is a theme that resonates deeply with Kabbalistic concepts of divine emanation and human potential. Just as the Sephirot are seen as emanations of the divine light, each reflecting a different aspect of God's being, so too could AI be seen as a tool for exploring the multifaceted nature of consciousness, potentially even revealing new dimensions of the divine. Might an AI one day be able to experience Keter? However, the ethical implications of AI and its potential impact on human spirituality must also be carefully considered through a Kabbalistic lens. The principles of balance, harmony, and responsibility, which are central to the Kabbalistic worldview, can serve as a guide for developing and deploying AI in a way that promotes human flourishing and avoids unintended consequences. For example, if AI were to serve as a tool for promoting disinformation, this would cause an imbalance of the Sephirot and must be corrected. It would be particularly devastating to hard intellect and Netzach emotions. What then are Kabbalistic principles that can aid in understanding the mind? Let us now consider the growing interest in Kabbalah within the field of psychology, particularly within Jungian psychology and other depth-oriented approaches that seek to explore the hidden depths of the human psyche. As we have seen, Kabbalah has long been recognized as a map of consciousness, a symbolic representation of the inner landscape of the human being, which is further explored in the Emerald Tablets. But how does it relate to modern depth-oriented psychology? Kabbalistic concepts, such as the shadow, the hidden, repressed aspects of the personality, and the anima animus, the feminine and masculine aspects of the unconscious, resonate strongly with key themes in Jungian thought, as well as the concept of individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated self. The Tree of Life, with its 10 Sephirot representing different aspects of the personality, can be used as a powerful tool for self-exploration, providing insights into the interplay of conscious and unconscious forces that shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Is it any wonder that therapists and counselors are increasingly turning to Kabbalistic principles to help individuals heal from trauma, achieve greater self-awareness, and unlock their full potential? Consider, for instance, how a therapist might use the Tree of Life to help a client understand their relationship with their shadow self. By mapping the client's personality traits and behaviors onto the different Sephirot, the therapist can help them identify the aspects of themselves that they have disowned or repressed, and then guide them through a process of integrating these shadow elements into their conscious awareness. This process, akin to the alchemical great work of transforming base metals into gold, can lead to profound healing and personal transformation. If psychology analyzes the individual, how can Kabbalah inform social progress? Indeed, Kabbalistic principles are being applied to contemporary social justice movements, offering a unique and powerful framework for understanding and addressing issues of inequality, oppression, and injustice. Movements for racial equality, gender equality, environmental justice, and other progressive causes are finding inspiration in the Kabbalistic worldview, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of all beings, the inherent dignity of every individual, and the responsibility to repair the world. For example, if the Sephira of Jevura is associated with strength and justice, might we not see its distortion as the root of oppression? The Tree of Life, with its 10 Sephirot representing different aspects of the divine and human experience, can be used as a framework for understanding social inequality, with each Sephira representing a different aspect of a just and equitable society. Hesed, loving kindness, can be seen as representing the need for compassion and empathy in our interactions with others, while Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, can be seen as a call to action, inspiring us to work towards creating a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world for all. But can this system apply to nature itself? Let us turn now to the emerging field of Eco-Kabbalah, which seeks to apply Kabbalistic principles to environmental ethics and ecological sustainability. As we grapple with the challenges of climate change, deforestation, pollution, and other environmental crises, can Kabbalah offer any meaningful insights into how we can live in greater harmony with the natural world? Indeed, the Tree of Life can be seen as a model for understanding the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of ecological balance. Each sephira, representing a different aspect of the divine and human experience, can be mapped onto the various components and processes of the natural world, from the soil and the water to the plants and the animals. Malkuth, the material world, is recognized as the realm where we must enact these ethical considerations. But can Kabbalah extend even beyond this? The influence of Kabbalah extends into contemporary art, literature, music, and film, showcasing its continued relevance in popular culture and the various examples of symbolism present across many forms of media. But is it possible that the influence is subliminal? Many contemporary artists are using Kabbalistic symbols and imagery to explore themes of spirituality, identity, and the nature of reality, infusing their works with hidden meanings and deeper layers of interpretation. Authors, musicians, and filmmakers are also drawing on Kabbalistic concepts to create compelling narratives and characters, often exploring themes of transformation, redemption, and the search for meaning. Might we see the hero's journey, so popular in modern storytelling, as a reflection of the soul's ascent through the Sephirot? However, before we conclude this exploration of Kabbalah's presence in modern society, we must address the challenges and criticisms that it faces, including concerns about cultural appropriation, commercialization, and the potential for misuse of its esoteric knowledge. For what happens when people who are uninitiated attempt to practice the occult? The ethical implications of non-Jewish individuals and groups appropriating Kabbalistic teachings without proper respect or understanding must be carefully considered, as it can lead to the distortion of its wisdom. The potential for Kabbalah to be commercialized and exploited for financial gain, undermining its spiritual integrity and making it inaccessible to those who cannot afford it, is a valid concern, and one that must be addressed with ethical conduct. The dangers of misinterpreting or manipulating Kabbalistic concepts for personal power or unethical purposes must be emphasized, and there must be a commitment to ethical responsibility and spiritual discernment. After all, power without wisdom is a dangerous thing. In sum, we have seen that Kabbalah continues to be a source of insight and inspiration in the 21st century, offering a framework for understanding the complexities of technology, psychology, social justice, ecology, and art. But as we navigate the esoteric future, we must approach Kabbalah with respect, humility, and a commitment to ethical conduct, engaging with diverse perspectives. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration into the hidden origins of Yahweh, it is paramount to keep in mind the interconnectedness of all things, and we will now see how this relates to other disciplines. As we delve deeper into the lasting impact Kabbalah has had on the Western esoteric tradition, what will we unearth about its ever-evolving nature? But what if the God of the Old Testament was not the ultimate source of goodness and truth, but a flawed and limited being? What if the very foundation of Western religious thought rested upon a misunderstanding or even a deliberate deception? It may come as a surprise that such radical reinterpretations of Yahweh are not a modern invention, but rather have roots stretching back to the early centuries of Christianity itself. We are speaking, of course, of Gnosticism, a diverse and often controversial set of early Christian beliefs that offered a radically different interpretation of Yahweh, one that challenged the very core of what would become mainstream Christian doctrine. It's important to clarify that this section will focus specifically on Gnostic views of Yahweh, rather than providing a comprehensive overview of Gnosticism itself, which is a complex and multifaceted subject. We will therefore not be covering every single Gnostic sect, nor all of their beliefs. Instead, we will be focusing on the central question: how did Gnostics reimagine Yahweh, and why did they view him so differently from mainstream Christians? Prepare to have your assumptions challenged, for the Gnostic perspective offers a truly alternative understanding of the divine. To understand the Gnostic view of Yahweh, we must first grasp the core concepts of Gnostic cosmology. Unlike traditional Christianity, which posits a single, benevolent God who created the universe ex nihilo, out of nothing, Gnosticism presents a far more complex and nuanced picture. At the heart of this cosmology lies the pleroma, the realm of the true God, a perfect and unknowable source of all being. From this pleroma emanate eons, divine beings or aspects of the divine, each representing a different attribute or quality of the true God. Think of it like a prism refracting light into different colors, each color being an eon. However, according to Gnostic teachings, a disruption occurred within the pleroma, leading to the creation of a flawed and imperfect being known as the demiurge. This demiurge, often associated with the Old Testament God, Yahweh, is the creator of the material world, but not the supreme God. It is crucial to understand this distinction. The demiurge is not evil per se, but rather ignorant of the true God and trapped within his own limited creation. Contrast this sharply with the traditional Christian view of a perfect creation by a benevolent God, and the radical nature of the Gnostic perspective becomes immediately apparent. But what does this imply for the nature of Yahweh? Within this Gnostic cosmos, Yahweh or Jehovah is not seen as the ultimate God, but as the demiurge, a lower, flawed creator. Gnostics viewed Yahweh as ignorant of the true God, the monad, and trapped within his own limited creation. He is like a craftsman who builds a house without understanding the grand design of the architect. Indeed, Gnostic texts portray Yahweh as claiming to be the only God, a claim that the Gnostics vehemently rejected as an arrogant and ignorant statement. They saw this claim as evidence of Yahweh's limited understanding and his inability to perceive the true nature of reality. To the Gnostics, the material world itself was not a benevolent creation, but rather a prison created by the demiurge to trap souls and keep them from realizing their true potential and connection to the pleroma. Consider this: if Yahweh is the demiurge, then the very laws and commandments he imposes may be seen as chains binding humanity to this material prison, rather than guides leading to spiritual liberation. Is this, perhaps, why the Gnostics so vehemently opposed the authority of the Old Testament? The Gnostic reinterpretation extends even to the Genesis story, specifically the roles of the serpent and the fall of Adam and Eve. In the traditional Christian narrative, the serpent is seen as a tempter, leading humanity astray and causing their expulsion from paradise. However, the Gnostics viewed the serpent in a completely different light, as a liberator, offering knowledge, gnosis, to humanity and challenging the authority of Yahweh. The serpent's act of offering the fruit of knowledge is not seen as a transgression, but as an act of rebellion against the demiurge's tyranny, an act of awakening that set humanity on the path towards spiritual liberation. The Gnostic view of the fall is, therefore, a positive one. It represents the awakening of human consciousness, the beginning of the journey towards spiritual liberation from the material prison created by Yahweh. Rather than a tragic event that resulted in humanity's separation from God, the fall is seen as a necessary step in the process of self-discovery and the realization of one's true divine nature. In essence, Gnostics believed that ignorance is the true sin, and knowledge is the path to redemption. But how does this knowledge spread in a world ruled by the demiurge? To fully understand the Gnostic perspective, we must introduce the concept of the archons, the rulers of the material world who serve the demiurge and seek to keep humanity trapped in ignorance. The archons are like prison guards, enforcing the laws of the demiurge and preventing souls from escaping their material confinement. Gnostics viewed Yahweh as the chief archon, enforcing his laws and commandments to maintain control over humanity. They saw the Old Testament laws not as a means of guiding humanity towards spiritual enlightenment, but as a means of enslaving them, binding them to the material world, and preventing them from realizing their true potential. Gnostic teachings encourage rebellion against Yahweh and the archons, urging individuals to seek liberation through gnosis, through direct knowledge of the divine, bypassing the intermediaries and breaking free from the chains of the demiurge's creation. Consider this forbidden knowledge. What if the very act of questioning religious authority is a Gnostic act of rebellion? Within this cosmic drama, Christ plays a pivotal role as the revealer of truth, sent by the true God to liberate humanity from the bondage of Yahweh and the archons. The Gnostics did not see Christ as a mere human sacrifice, atoning for the sins of humanity, but rather as a spiritual guide, leading humanity towards the true God and away from the false God of the Old Testament. Gnostic texts portray Christ as challenging Yahweh's authority directly, offering a path to spiritual enlightenment that is in direct contradiction of the Old Testament laws. This represents a new covenant based on gnosis, on direct personal experience of the divine, rather than on blind obedience to the laws of the demiurge. The Gnostics saw Christ's teachings as a radical departure from the established religious order, a call to break free from the chains of ignorance and embrace the light of true knowledge. What if the true purpose of Christ was to expose the false god? It is important to note that not all Gnostic systems held precisely the same view of Yahweh. Valentinian Gnosticism, for example, offers a more nuanced perspective. Valentinus, a prominent Gnostic teacher of the 2nd century, taught that the demiurge was not inherently evil, but rather misguided, born out of the lower eons' misinterpretations of the divine pleroma. Valentinian Gnostics saw the material world as a reflection of the divine pleroma, albeit a distorted one, rather than a completely separate and evil creation. This more optimistic view of human potential emphasized the possibility of achieving spiritual perfection and returning to the pleroma, not through rebellion against the demiurge, but through understanding and transcending his limitations. Valentinianism, therefore, offered a more nuanced and complex understanding of the relationship between the true God, the demiurge, and the material world, suggesting that even within the flawed creation of Yahweh, there is a spark of the divine that can be awakened. In summary, our exploration of Gnostic views of Yahweh has revealed a radical departure from traditional interpretations. Gnostics viewed Yahweh as the demiurge, an ignorant creator who sought to keep humanity trapped in ignorance, while Christ was the revealer of truth, offering a path to spiritual liberation. It is vital that we understand Gnostic perspectives if we wish to gain a deeper appreciation of the diversity and complexity of early Christian thought. This Gnostic lens forces us to reimagine the very nature of the divine and begs a deeper questioning of our inherited spiritual and religious norms. With the Gnostic view of Yahweh now clearly established, it's natural to question how they further viewed the cosmic conflict between good and evil, the dichotomy of the divine imprisonment. For Gnostics, this wasn't just a moral issue, but a fundamental aspect of the cosmos, where the material world represented an entanglement of both forces. The figure of Yahweh, as the demiurge, becomes closely tied to the imposition of law and the inherent limitations of the material world, which Gnostics often perceived as a form of cosmic constraint or evil. The restrictions, rules, and demands for worship and sacrifices were not seen as benevolence, but demands by a petty tyrant of the earthly domain. Having glimpsed the Gnostic perspective on the duality of good and evil, it will serve us well to explore dualism outside the confines of Gnosticism, broadening our understanding of Yahweh by considering other ways of interpreting this dichotomy. Having glimpsed the Gnostic perspective on the duality of good and evil, and the view of Yahweh as the demiurge, it will serve us well to explore dualism outside the confines of Gnosticism, broadening our understanding of Yahweh by considering other ways of interpreting this dichotomy. Can we identify contrasting forces within and or surrounding the figure of Yahweh, even outside of Gnostic frameworks? Let us turn our attention to Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest dualistic religions originating in ancient Persia, offering us an alternative lens through which to view the concept of opposing forces in the cosmos and potentially within the divine itself. Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra, likely sometime between the 15th and 10th centuries BCE, presents a universe locked in a perpetual struggle between two opposing forces. Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, representing all that is good, true, and luminous, and Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman, the destructive spirit, embodying evil, falsehood, and darkness. This cosmic battle is not merely a philosophical abstraction, but an active and ongoing conflict that shapes the course of history and the fate of humanity, a struggle played out on both a grand, cosmic scale and within the hearts and minds of individuals. What implications might this ancient Persian worldview have for our understanding of Yahweh's origins? In Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda is the creator of the universe and the source of all goodness, light, and order. He is assisted by a host of benevolent beings known as Amsha Spentas, who represent different aspects of the divine, such as wisdom, righteousness, and immortality. In stark contrast, Angra Mainyu is the embodiment of evil and destruction, constantly seeking to undermine Ahura Mazda's creation and lead humanity astray. He commands an army of malevolent spirits known as devas, who sow chaos, disease, and moral corruption. The cosmic battle between these two opposing forces is the central theme of Zoroastrian theology, a battle that will ultimately culminate in a final confrontation where Ahura Mazda will triumph and Angra Mainyu will be vanquished. But how did this ancient Persian worldview influence the development of monotheistic religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? Scholars have long debated the extent of Zoroastrian influence on Judaism, particularly during and after the Babylonian exile, 586–539 BCE, when many Jews were exposed to Persian culture and religious ideas. During this period, the concept of a cosmic struggle between good and evil may have influenced the development of Jewish eschatology, specifically beliefs about the end times, the coming of a Messiah, and the resurrection of the dead. Furthermore, the Zoroastrian emphasis on moral dualism may have contributed to the development of Jewish demonology, with the emergence of figures like Satan as an embodiment of evil and opposition to God. Could it be that the seeds of a dualistic understanding of the divine were sown during this period of cultural exchange? It is important to note that mainstream Judaism does not explicitly endorse a dualistic worldview in the same way as Zoroastrianism, but there are passages in the Hebrew Bible that can be interpreted through a Zoroastrian lens. For instance, the Book of Job portrays a cosmic struggle between God and Satan, with Satan challenging God's justice and testing the faith of Job. Similarly, certain prophetic passages describe a future battle between the forces of good and evil, culminating in the triumph of God's kingdom. While these passages do not necessarily imply a full-fledged dualistic theology, they do suggest an awareness of opposing forces at play in the world. Zoroastrianism offers a framework for understanding Yahweh as a force for order and righteousness in a world constantly threatened by chaos and destruction. But the Persian influence is not limited to Judaism. Where else does it appear? Let us consider Manichaeism, a syncretic religion founded by the prophet Mani in the 3rd century CE, as another important example of dualistic thought, further illustrating the enduring appeal of this concept across diverse cultures and religious traditions. Mani, born in Mesopotamia, sought to create a universal religion that synthesized elements from Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Buddhism, drawing upon the wisdom and insights of these diverse traditions. His teachings spread rapidly throughout the Roman Empire and beyond, attracting followers from all walks of life, even as it was brutally suppressed by the Roman state. But what was the secret to its appeal? Central to Manichaeism is the belief in a fundamental duality between the realms of light and darkness, a cosmic struggle that permeates all levels of existence. The universe, according to Manichaean cosmology, is a battleground between these two opposing forces, with humanity caught in the middle, torn between the desire for spiritual enlightenment and the allure of material pleasures. In this framework, the material world is seen as a creation of the forces of darkness, designed to trap souls and keep them from realizing their true potential. Humanity can escape the bondage of the material world through asceticism, self-denial, and the pursuit of spiritual knowledge. Is it possible to view Yahweh through this Manichaean lens? Now, shifting our focus eastward, we turn to the Kabbalah, a mystical tradition within Judaism, to uncover yet another layer of dualistic thought and explore how it might illuminate our understanding of Yahweh. Within Kabbalah, duality manifests in complex and nuanced ways, perhaps most prominently through the concept of the Sitra Achra, the other side or left side, representing the realm of darkness, negativity, and chaos that exists alongside the divine realm of the Sephirot. The Sitra Achra is not seen as an independent force equal to the divine, but rather as a shadow or reflection of the Sephirot, representing their unbalanced or distorted aspects. Think of it as a mirror reflecting the divine light, but with imperfections and distortions that create a distorted image. How might this Kabbalistic concept inform our understanding of Yahweh's darker aspects? It is essential to understand that the Sitra Achra, while representing negativity and chaos, is not seen as inherently evil or separate from the divine. Rather, it is understood as a necessary aspect of creation, a realm of potential that can be either constructive or destructive, depending on how it is approached. The Zohar, a foundational text of Kabbalah, describes the Sitra Achra as a shadow of God, a reminder that even within the divine realm, there exists the potential for imbalance and distortion. The existence of the Sitra Achra highlights the importance of maintaining balance and harmony within the self and the cosmos, recognizing that both light and darkness are necessary for the full expression of the divine. Now, let us explore some of the figures associated with this shadow realm. Within Kabbalistic mythology, Lilith and Samael are prominent figures associated with the Sitra Achra, embodying the dangerous and seductive aspects of the shadow realm. Lilith, often portrayed as the first wife of Adam, who rebelled against him and became a demon, embodies female sexuality, independence, and the rejection of patriarchal norms. Samael, often identified as the angel of death, or the serpent in the Garden of Eden, tempted humanity with forbidden knowledge, challenging the authority of God. These figures represent the forces of temptation and rebellion, urging individuals to stray from the path of righteousness and embrace the allure of darkness. Can we see echoes of these figures in the narratives surrounding Yahweh? It's key to remember that in Kabbalah, there is an acknowledgement of divine judgment alongside divine mercy. This interplay between seemingly opposing attributes is essential to understanding the Kabbalistic perspective. The struggle to balance the divine attributes can be seen as a cosmic struggle, reflecting the inherent tensions and contradictions within the divine itself. The Kabbalists understood that divine judgment was just as necessary as divine mercy, as the concept of strict justice alongside all-forgiving mercy keeps all things in balance, and that both were necessary for the proper functioning of the cosmos. Even in these more esoteric and mystical perspectives, the duality of the world and the human experience is acknowledged and incorporated. Synthesizing these dualistic interpretations, we can see a recurring theme, the tension between seemingly opposing forces. Consider the portrayal of Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible, where we find a striking contrast between his wrath and his mercy. On the one hand, we see Yahweh as a God of judgment and punishment, inflicting plagues upon Egypt, commanding the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and unleashing the flood upon humanity. These acts demonstrate his power, authority, and unwavering commitment to justice. But on the other hand, we see Yahweh as a God of compassion and forgiveness, making a covenant with Noah, sparing the city of Nineveh, and promising redemption and restoration to the Israelites. This duality reflects the complex and multifaceted nature of the divine, suggesting that Yahweh embodies both justice and love, power and compassion. How do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory aspects of his character? Having journeyed through Gnostic, Zoroastrian, Manichaean, and Kabbalistic perspectives, we can now summarize the key insights gained from this exploration of dualistic interpretations of Yahweh, emphasizing the recurring theme of opposing forces and the struggle between good and evil. These dualistic frameworks offer alternative perspectives on Yahweh's character and role, challenging the traditional view of him as a solely benevolent and all-powerful being. Ultimately, understanding these different perspectives is crucial for gaining a more complete and nuanced appreciation of the complexities of religious belief and the ongoing search for meaning and purpose. But what are the implications of these dualistic interpretations? Having journeyed through Gnostic, Zoroastrian, Manichaean, and Kabbalistic perspectives, we can now summarize the key insights gained from this exploration of dualistic interpretations of Yahweh, emphasizing the recurring theme of opposing forces and the struggle between good and evil. These dualistic frameworks offer alternative perspectives on Yahweh's character and role, challenging the traditional view of him as a solely benevolent and all-powerful being. Ultimately, understanding these different perspectives is crucial for gaining a more complete and nuanced appreciation of the complexities of religious belief and the ongoing search for meaning and purpose. But what are the implications of these dualistic interpretations? As we continue to frame Yahweh, we must now consider his shadow. We've touched upon the dualistic interpretations, highlighting both the awe-inspiring and the potentially troubling aspects of Yahweh as depicted in ancient texts. But what if these aren't just opposing attributes of a divine figure? What if they point to something deeper, something hidden within the very archetype of Yahweh itself? To explore this, let us introduce the Jungian concept of the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents the unconscious and repressed aspects of a personality, encompassing traits, emotions, and behaviors that are deemed unacceptable by the conscious mind or by society. It's the repository of all that we deny, disown, or fear within ourselves, a dark mirror reflecting our hidden potential for both good and evil. This isn't about condemnation, but rather a path toward wholeness. Therefore, let us frame this section as an exploration of the shadow of Yahweh. This is not an attempt to condemn or diminish the figure of Yahweh, but rather to understand the complexities inherent in any powerful archetype, especially one that has shaped the course of Western civilization. By acknowledging and integrating the shadow aspects of Yahweh, we can gain a deeper and more nuanced understanding of both the divine and ourselves. This raises a core question. What can examining these less comfortable aspects of Yahweh reveal? Let's turn our attention to Yahweh's destructive acts. The flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, the plagues of Egypt, these are not mere historical events, but rather narratives that reveal a particular facet of Yahweh's character, a willingness to inflict widespread destruction in the name of justice or divine will. But what are we to make of these stories? Are they literal accounts of divine intervention, or are they projections of human aggression onto a divine figure? From a psychological perspective, these narratives could be seen as examples of projection, a defense mechanism where individuals attribute their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or impulses to another person or entity. Could it be that these stories allowed early Israelites to externalize their own destructive impulses, attributing them to a divine figure who acted as a scapegoat for their own aggression? The scapegoat concept offers another lens through which to view these narratives. Did these stories allow early Israelites to externalize their own destructive impulses, attributing them to a divine figure who acted as a scapegoat for their own aggression? By blaming Yahweh for the destruction, could they absolve themselves of responsibility for their own violent tendencies? But what are the ethical implications of portraying God as violent? Does this legitimize violence in human societies? If God is willing to inflict suffering and death on a massive scale, does this give humans permission to do the same? These are difficult questions, but they are essential for understanding the complex relationship between religion, violence, and human behavior. Now shifting our focus, let's turn to Yahweh as lawgiver, enshrined in the Ten Commandments and other strictures found in the Old Testament. These laws, covering everything from murder and theft to adultery and idolatry, represent a comprehensive system of moral and social regulation. But how should we analyze these laws? Are they divinely inspired guidelines for ethical behavior, or are they a system of social control designed to regulate behavior and maintain order within a community? From a sociological perspective, laws serve as a means of social control, defining acceptable and unacceptable behavior and prescribing punishments for those who violate the rules. Did Yahweh's laws serve a similar function, establishing a clear hierarchy of power and enforcing conformity to a particular set of beliefs and practices? It is important to note that there's potential for these laws to be used to justify oppression. History is replete with examples of religious authority being used to discriminate against and persecute minority groups. Religious laws have been used to justify slavery, the subjugation of women, and the persecution of homosexuals, among other atrocities. Does the divine sanction of Yahweh's laws make them immune to criticism or challenge, or is it essential to question authority, even when divinely sanctioned? By questioning authority, could we find deeper truths? Consider, further, the concept of the chosen people, a cornerstone of Jewish identity and a source of both pride and controversy throughout history. The belief that Yahweh has chosen the Israelites above all other nations has provided a sense of collective identity, solidarity, and purpose for the Jewish people. But let's analyze the concept sociologically. Group identity, particularly the idea of being chosen, often fosters solidarity and mutual support within the group. However, this sense of belonging can also lead to exclusion and intolerance towards those who are not part of the group. How can we reconcile the positive aspects of group identity with its potential for negative consequences? Now consider its potential for intolerance, xenophobia, and exclusion. The belief in being chosen can easily morph into a sense of superiority, leading to the dehumanization and mistreatment of those deemed other. History offers numerous examples of violence and discrimination justified by this belief, from the Crusades to the Holocaust. Is the concept of the chosen people inherently problematic, or can it be interpreted in a way that promotes inclusivity and respect for diversity? Are these ancient scriptures giving tacit permission to violence, oppression, and exclusion? Now, let us turn to the concept of patriarchy in the ancient Near East. Patriarchy, a social system in which men hold primary power and predominate in roles of political leadership, moral authority, and control of property, was deeply embedded in the cultures of the ancient Near East, including ancient Israel. But what does this mean for our understanding of Yahweh? Analyzing the portrayal of women in the Old Testament reveals numerous examples of marginalization, subordination, and even violence against women. From Eve's role in the fall to the stories of Sarah, Hagar, and Tamar, women are often depicted as objects of male desire, instruments of procreation, or sources of temptation and sin. To what extent does this patriarchal worldview shape our understanding of Yahweh's character and his relationship to humanity? It is vital that we address the suppression of female deities like Asherah, who was once worshipped alongside Yahweh in ancient Israel. The Hebrew Bible contains numerous references to the worship of Asherah, often condemned by the prophets as a form of idolatry. The The suppression of Asherah and other female deities reflects a broader trend towards the consolidation of male power and the erasure of female divinity. But even still, does the ongoing struggle for gender equality within religious traditions reflect a desire to reclaim the feminine divine and challenge patriarchal interpretations of Scripture? Finally, let's discuss the limitations of literal interpretation of religious texts. While the Bible can be a source of profound wisdom and spiritual insight, it can also be interpreted in ways that are rigid, dogmatic, and even harmful. How can we avoid the pitfalls of literalism while still honoring the sacredness of Scripture? Literalism can stifle critical thinking and spiritual growth by discouraging questioning, interpretation, and the exploration of alternative perspectives. When religious texts are treated as inerrant and unchangeable, they can become a barrier to understanding and a source of conflict and division. But what are the dangers of religious fundamentalism? There is the rejection of science and scholarship, as well as a resistance to social and political change. It's easy to see how fundamentalism has led to violence, oppression, and the suppression of dissent throughout history. With so much at stake, is it possible for us to emphasize the importance of critical inquiry and open-mindedness in our approach to religious texts and traditions? Having explored these various aspects of Yahweh's shadow power, authority, exclusivity, patriarchy, and literalism, we can now summarize the key insights gained from this exploration. Acknowledging the shadow is necessary for wholeness, but how? Just as individuals must confront their own inner darkness in order to achieve psychological integration, so too must religious traditions acknowledge and grapple with their own shadow aspects. This does not mean rejecting or abandoning these traditions, but rather engaging with them in a more critical, nuanced, and self-aware way. But what is the path for integrating the shadow? Perhaps integrating the shadow is to seek new interpretations of the divine within. This includes reinterpreting values, facilitating a deeper connection to self, community, and the divine. But what does integration practically mean, and how to implement moving forward? If we implement new interpretations of the divine, then this means we must begin our human quest. What does integrating this ultimately mean? Acknowledging the shadow is necessary for wholeness, but how can this be practically achieved, and what new interpretations of the divine might arise from such an endeavor? Perhaps the path lies not in negating Yahweh, but in embracing the full spectrum of his complexity, acknowledging both the light and the shadow, and integrating them into a more holistic understanding. Let us now turn to the concept of divine immanence, the belief that God is not separate from the world, but is present within it and within humanity. How does recognizing Yahweh's shadow influence our interaction with the divine immanent within ourselves and the world around us? We have previously explored the ethical quandaries presented by certain Old Testament laws and their potential for misuse as tools of societal control. But what happens when we begin to question these strict interpretations and ethical codes? Numerous modern spiritual thinkers are actively challenging literal interpretations of the Old Testament, seeking to reconcile ancient wisdom with contemporary values. Consider, for instance, the laws regarding homosexuality, traditionally condemned as an abomination. Modern interpretations often emphasize the importance of love, acceptance, and inclusivity, arguing that these values supersede outdated and potentially harmful interpretations. Or consider the laws concerning the treatment of foreigners or those of differing faiths. Many contemporary ethical thinkers actively challenge the exclusivity and potential for violence found in these narratives, calling instead for universal compassion and respect for all human beings, regardless of their origin or belief system. Is there still value in retaining the concept of law, or are we meant to find our own sense of morality through love and acceptance? Integrating these revised understandings into the framework of modern social justice connects the divine call from the Torah's history of liberation movements with the modern struggle for equality and human rights. Consider activists who ground their movements in this concept, drawing inspiration from the Exodus story and the prophets' calls for justice. For example, many contemporary Jewish social justice organizations actively engage in movements for racial equality, economic justice, and environmental protection, seeing these struggles as a continuation of the Torah's call to create a more just and equitable world. How might Kabbalah apply to this framework, and how is it actively engaged in these movements? Kabbalah teaches that divinity is present in all things, and that each individual has a responsibility to repair the world, tikkun olam. This perspective encourages activists to see their work as a sacred task, aligning themselves with the divine will to create a more just and harmonious world. But as we've explored, there are certain dangers to religious exclusivity, particularly the idea of a chosen people. How, then, can we embrace a modern, inclusive reinterpretation of this concept, moving beyond exclusivity and embracing a sense of global responsibility? Many contemporary thinkers reinterpret the idea of chosenness as carrying a unique responsibility to care for the world and to act as a moral compass for humanity. Rather than seeing themselves as superior, they view themselves as uniquely positioned through their history and tradition to advocate for justice, compassion, and peace. Consider the concept of a light unto the nations, often cited as a purpose for the Jewish people. Modern interpretations emphasize the importance of setting an example of ethical behavior, promoting social justice, and working to create a better world for all. How is this new sense of chosen now connected to immanence, the understanding that the divine is present within all people and all things? Let us now turn to patriarchal elements in traditional portrayals of Yahweh and the sidelining and often demonization of female figures like Asherah. What steps can we take to reclaim the divine feminine, restoring balance and harmony to our understanding of the divine? Modern efforts to reclaim the divine feminine are flourishing, as many seek to reintegrate female deities and feminine qualities into their spiritual practices. Consider the rise of feminist theology, which challenges patriarchal interpretations of Scripture and seeks to create a more inclusive and egalitarian understanding of God. Specific rituals are emerging that emphasize female empowerment, such as ceremonies honoring female prophets, reinterpreting traditional blessings to include feminine language, and creating new rituals that celebrate female life cycle events like menarche and menopause. In this way, we re-establish a more rounded connection with the divine. Now let's consider the limitations of literal interpretation and explore the idea of religious texts as symbolic maps rather than literal instruction manuals. What is gained and what is lost by embracing symbolism? Embracing symbolism unlocks a deeper, more personal connection to religious texts, allowing us to move beyond rigid dogma and engage with the underlying wisdom and archetypal patterns. By recognizing that these stories and laws are not necessarily meant to be taken literally, we open ourselves up to multiple layers of meaning and interpretation. Consider the story of Noah's Ark. A literal interpretation might focus on the historical accuracy of the flood and the logistics of fitting all those animals on a boat. However, a symbolic interpretation might focus on the deeper themes of purification, renewal, and the potential for humanity to start anew after a period of destruction. By embracing this symbolism, we come closer to true understanding. But of course, the question that remains is, how can we make this change? What are the pathways to transformation that can help us integrate these new perspectives and deepen our connection to the divine? Here, the Kabbalah offers a powerful framework for personal growth and spiritual development, particularly through the symbolism of the tree of life. Each sephira represents a different aspect of the divine and a different facet of human experience. Activating these sephirot through meditation, ritual, and ethical action can lead to profound personal transformation. For example, focusing on hesed, loving kindness, can cultivate compassion and generosity, while working with Jebura, strength and justice, can help us to set boundaries and stand up for what is right. Practically, this entails engaging in practices that cultivate these qualities, such as acts of kindness, meditation on loving kindness, and advocating for social justice. The key, then, is to integrate these qualities into our daily lives. Finally, it is time for a different way of thinking. What does it mean to transcend duality, to see all as a manifestation of divine unity? To go beyond duality is to recognize that seemingly opposing forces are actually complementary aspects of a single reality. It means seeing the light and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine, the good and the evil as interconnected and interdependent. This requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to embrace paradox and ambiguity, and a deep trust in the underlying unity of all things. Practically, this might involve seeking out common ground with those who hold opposing views, recognizing the validity of different perspectives, and cultivating a sense of empathy and compassion for all beings. Only then can we begin to integrate and come to a true understanding. As we conclude this exploration of the hidden origins and evolving interpretations of Yahweh, we must recognize that this is but one interpretation among many. How has this particular interpretation shaped the modern world, and what might be the future interpretations of Yahweh? This evolving perception of Yahweh has fostered interfaith dialogue and understanding, bridging divides and promoting a more inclusive vision of spirituality. This synthesis pushes us towards a more inclusive and holistic understanding of the divine, and where do we go next? Ultimately, the exploration of Yahweh's shadow and the reinterpretation of his role in the modern world is about empowering ourselves to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable future for all. As we concluded our previous exploration, it became clear that empowering ourselves requires understanding the different interpretations of Yahweh. But what if the key to understanding Yahweh's role in our lives lies not just in historical or mythological analysis, but in unlocking the very cosmic blueprint that he embodies? This discussion has far more practical applications than mere intellectual stimulation, and so you may need to pay extra careful attention to reap the full benefits. Let us embark on a new journey, unveiling how esoteric systems can illuminate Yahweh's cosmic blueprint, offering a roadmap for individual transformation. This exploration transcends mere intellectual curiosity. It's about attaining a deeper understanding of ourselves, our existence, and the divine will guiding us toward practical application in our daily lives. It's about seeking ways to connect with the divine and shape our lives, rather than dissecting concepts from a distance. So, how can esoteric frameworks serve as tools for personal and collective evolution, guided by understanding Yahweh's role? Let us now turn to the Hermetic principle of as above, so below, a cornerstone of esoteric thought, to illuminate this connection. This principle, eloquently articulated in the Kybalion, suggests that the microcosm, the individual, mirrors the macrocosm, the universe, that earthly manifestations and human experiences are reflections of higher cosmic realities and divine attributes. It's the assertion that what happens on one level of reality is reflected on every other level. Just as a drop of water contains the same chemical composition as the vast ocean, so too does the individual soul reflect the divine essence of Yahweh. In the context of Yahweh, this principle implies that earthly events and human experiences reflect higher cosmic realities and divine attributes. Consider the story of Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac. On a literal level, it is a test of faith, but esoterically, it can be interpreted as a symbolic representation of the ultimate sacrifice, the surrender of the ego to the divine will. Abraham's willingness mirrors Yahweh's own sacrifice in sending his presence into the world. Similarly, the Ten Commandments can be seen not just as a set of moral laws, but as a reflection of the divine order and harmony that governs the cosmos. Each commandment, when followed, aligns the individual with the higher cosmic realities, creating harmony between the microcosm and macrocosm. By understanding that our actions resonate with the cosmic order, how much more deliberate will we be with our actions? Understanding the hermetic correspondence can lead to a more profound connection with Yahweh and a greater understanding of our place in the divine plan. When we recognize that our thoughts, feelings, and actions have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our immediate surroundings, we begin to cultivate a deeper sense of responsibility and purpose. It allows us to see that serving Yahweh is done through ourselves and our connection to each other, not necessarily through grand action. This principle allows us to move beyond simplistic interpretations of the Old Testament and other sacred texts, revealing the hidden layers of meaning and symbolic significance that lie beneath the surface. But how can we further unlock these hidden meanings? Expanding upon our exploration of the divine name, let us delve into the realm of gematria. We have previously discussed the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, reiterating its significance as the divine name and a key to understanding Yahweh. Now, let's expand upon the concept of gematria, explaining how numerical values assigned to Hebrew letters can reveal hidden connections and deeper meanings within sacred texts. Gematria, derived from Greek geometria, is a Kabbalistic method of interpreting Hebrew words and phrases by assigning numerical values to each letter. Since Hebrew letters also serve as numbers, each word possesses a numerical equivalent. By analyzing these numerical values, hidden connections and deeper meanings within sacred texts can be revealed. It is based on the idea that words or phrases with the same numerical value are related and can be interpreted as having a shared meaning or significance. It's like cracking a numerical code that unveils hidden layers of meaning within the sacred texts. The value of each letter in the Hebrew alphabet are as follows: Aleph 1, Bet 2, Gimel 3, Dalet 4, He 5, Vav 6, Zayin 7, Chet 8, Tet 9, Yod 10, Kaf 20, Lame 30, Mem 40, Nun 50, Samek 60, Ayin 70, P 80, Tzedi 90, Kaf 100, Resh 200, Shin 300, Tav 400. For example, the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, can be analyzed using gematria. Yod Y10, He H5, Vav V6, He H5. Adding these values together, 10565, yields 26. This number, 26, can then be compared to other words or phrases in the Hebrew Bible to find connections. One such connection is the Hebrew word echad, Hebrew aleph, Hebrew Hebrew kate, Hebrew Hebrew dalet, meaning one, which also has a gematria value of 13 Aleph 1, Chet 8, Dalet 4. When echad is doubled 1313, it also equals 26, the same value as YHWH. This numerical connection can be interpreted as a symbolic representation of Yahweh's oneness and unity, emphasizing the idea that God is one. But does this extend to other religions? Gematria can unlock a deeper understanding of Yahweh's attributes, revealing the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate concepts and ideas. By assigning numerical values to Hebrew letters and analyzing the resulting sums, we can uncover hidden layers of meaning within sacred texts and gain a deeper appreciation for the symbolic richness of the Hebrew language. Furthermore, we can apply our understanding of gematria to practical Kabbalah and rituals and meditations for diving connection. Building upon our previous discussion of practical Kabbalah, let us introduce specific rituals or meditative techniques used to connect with Yahweh and experience divine presence. How might these practices serve as a bridge to the divine? Practical Kabbalah involves actively engaging with the teachings and symbols of the Kabbalah through ritual, meditation, and other practices. It's about transforming theoretical knowledge into lived experience, directly experiencing the divine presence. One specific Kabbalistic practice involves visualizing the Tetragrammaton in conjunction with the Tree of Life. Begin by finding a quiet space where you can sit comfortably without being disturbed. Close your eyes and take several deep breaths, allowing your mind to settle. Visualize the Tree of Life before you, its 10 sephirot shining like radiant spheres of light. Then, begin to visualize the letters of the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, appearing within each sephira, starting with Yod in Keter, the crown, He in Chokmah, wisdom, Vav in Binah, understanding, and the final He in Malkuth, the kingdom. As you visualize each letter, recite its name aloud, vibrating the sound within your body. Imagine the letters glowing with divine light, filling you with a sense of peace, power, and connection to Yahweh. Feel the divine presence permeating your being, dissolving any sense of separation or limitation. Spend as much time as you need in this visualization, allowing yourself to be fully immersed in the divine energy. When you are ready, gently open your eyes and carry the sense of connection with you throughout your day. What other connections might be revealed through further ritual and meditation? The symbolic significance of each step is designed to align the individual with Yahweh's divine attributes and cosmic forces. Visualizing the tetragrammaton within the Sephirot aligns our consciousness with the divine emanations of the Tree of Life, attuning us to the flow of divine energy throughout the cosmos. Reciting the sacred names vibrates the divine sound within our bodies, activating our inner potential and connecting us to the divine source. But remember, proper intention, ethical conduct, and reverence are essential when engaging in these practices. These are not mere techniques, but sacred acts of devotion that require our utmost respect and sincerity. With that in mind, how might we consider the psychology behind these practices? Let's introduce the Jungian concept of archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and imagery that reside in the collective unconscious, and analyze Yahweh as an archetype, exploring the psychological significance of his various attributes and roles. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, proposed that the human psyche is composed of both a personal unconscious and a collective unconscious. The collective unconscious contains universal archetypes, which are inherited patterns of behavior, imagery, and symbolism that are common to all humanity. These archetypes manifest in myths, dreams, and religious beliefs, shaping our perceptions of the world and ourselves. Yahweh, as an archetype, embodies various aspects of the human experience, such as the father figure, the lawgiver, and the judge. As a father figure, he represents authority, protection, and guidance. As a lawgiver, he embodies morality, ethics, and the principles of justice. As a judge, he symbolizes discernment, accountability, and the consequences of our actions. Analyzing how the archetype of Yahweh manifests in the collective unconscious of Western culture, and how that shapes our perceptions of authority, morality, and the divine, leads to a deeper understanding of the self, revealing the psychological forces that shape our beliefs and behaviors. Are we simply acting out inherited patterns, or are we consciously choosing our path? Now, let us turn to the Kybalion, an esoteric text outlining 7 hermetic principles that govern reality, and explore how these principles can be applied to the Yahwistic narrative. These principles, mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender, offer a framework for understanding the nature of God, the cosmos, and the human condition. Remember, as above, so below. For instance, the principle of mentalism posits that the universe is a mental projection of the all, which, in the context of Yahweh, suggests that creation itself is an act of divine thought. The principle of polarity highlights the inherent duality in Yahweh's character, the interplay between wrath and mercy, justice and compassion. The principle of rhythm reflects the cyclical nature of creation and destruction, the ebb and flow of divine energy that permeates all things. If the universe is a projection, what does that say about what we can project? Understanding these hermetic principles provides a framework for interpreting the Old Testament and other sacred texts in a more symbolic and allegorical way. The stories of creation, the flood, and the Exodus can be seen as symbolic representations of universal principles, reflecting the dynamic interplay of cosmic forces and the ongoing evolution of consciousness. But are these symbolic interpretations merely intellectual exercises, or do they hold a deeper, transformative power? Connecting back to our previous mention of the Book of Enoch, let's explore how Enochian magic can offer a different understanding of Yahweh's relationship to angels, demons, and other spiritual entities, revealing a more complex and nuanced cosmology. The Book of Enoch, excluded from the biblical canon, presents an alternative perspective on divine beings, describing encounters with angels, demons, and other celestial entities. Enochian magic, a system of ritual magic based on the teachings of the angels Enoch, offers a means of connecting with these divine forces and accessing higher realms of consciousness. Enochian texts and practices can offer a different understanding of Yahweh's relationship to angels, demons, and other spiritual entities, revealing a more complex and nuanced cosmology. By engaging with Enochian magic, we can challenge traditional views of Yahweh and open up new pathways for spiritual exploration and transformation. But what secrets lie hidden within these ancient texts, and what dangers might we encounter along the way? As we synthesize these esoteric interpretations of Yahweh, it becomes clear that self-exploration and the quest for transformation are paramount. Esoteric frameworks such as Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Jungian psychology, and Enochian magic can serve as powerful tools for understanding ourselves, our existence, and the divine purpose. By engaging with these frameworks, we can deepen our connection with Yahweh and unlock our hidden potential. How do these interpretations and experiences change us? Therefore, let us engage in our own spiritual exploration, using these frameworks as guides to deepen our connection with Yahweh and unlock our hidden potential. We must practice mindfulness, engage in creative expression, and pursue social justice. Remember that the journey of transformation is a lifelong process, and the path to enlightenment is not always easy. But with perseverance, dedication, and an open mind, we can unlock the hidden potential within ourselves and create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable future for all. Our perceptions of Yahweh have been transformed through this exploration. This transformation, however, is not just intellectual but deeply personal, altering our understanding of the divine and our place within it. Recognizing the different perspectives and origins surrounding Yahweh is crucial. What we'll discover next is even more shocking and potentially world-changing. The divine has not finished speaking with us. Therefore, we must remain open to receiving what is yet to come. As we journeyed through our prior analysis, it became clear that self-exploration and the quest for transformation are paramount. But is there more than one way to transform, or even to interpret this transformation? As we now delve deeper, we find that understanding Yahweh's power extends beyond historical context or theological doctrines. It involves tapping into a fundamental cosmic force. This is not merely about dominion, but a fundamental energy that permeates the universe, shaping reality itself. Prepare to discover an even deeper and more esoteric understanding than you ever anticipated. The concept of divine energy or light emanating from Yahweh, filling the universe and sustaining all of creation, has long captivated esoteric scholars and practitioners. This divine effulgence is not a static entity, but a dynamic, flowing force that can be accessed and channeled through various spiritual practices. This power isn't confined to a singular, dogmatic interpretation, but serves as a wellspring for diverse esoteric explorations. What are the methods and schools of thought that interpret this force and energy, and how do they apply it to the Yahwistic narrative? Let us now transition into a discussion on the nature of the divine will, that guiding force that directs the flow of cosmic energy and shapes the destinies of individuals and nations. The divine will, in esoteric terms, is not simply a set of commandments or moral guidelines, but a fundamental principle of cosmic order, an inexorable force that governs the unfolding of reality. It's the blueprint upon which the universe is built, a symphony of interconnected events and energies that play out according to a grand, divine design. How does this differ from human will? Human will, by contrast, is the individual's capacity to make choices and exert control over their own life, often driven by egoic desires and limited perspectives. While human will has its place in the grand scheme of things, It is ultimately subservient to the divine will, like a drop of water in an ocean or a single brushstroke in a divine painting. Aligning oneself with the divine will involves transcending egoic desires, surrendering to the flow of cosmic energy, and embracing one's role in the larger divine plan. Esoteric traditions, such as Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and Gnosticism, offer various methods for understanding and aligning with the divine will. But why is aligning with divine will so important? Consider the Kabbalistic concept of tikkun olam, the repairing of the world, which involves actively participating in the restoration of cosmic harmony. This requires understanding the divine will and acting in accordance with its principles. Similarly, Hermetic practitioners seek to align themselves with the laws of nature and the cosmic order, recognizing that true power comes not from dominating the universe, but from harmonizing with it. Understanding the divine will, therefore, is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a practical necessity for those seeking spiritual growth and transformation. But how does this understanding translate into our individual destinies, and how does it connect to a larger divine plan? Building on our exploration of the divine will, let us now focus on destiny, that predetermined course that shapes our lives and guides us toward our ultimate purpose. Destiny, in esoteric terms, is not a rigid, unchangeable fate, but a fluid and dynamic process that unfolds in accordance with the divine will. It is the interplay between our individual choices and the cosmic forces that shape our lives, a dance between free will and divine providence. What happens when destiny is connected to a larger, divine plan, a grand tapestry woven across time and space? The divine plan represents the overarching design of creation, the blueprint for the universe's unfolding, encompassing the destinies of individuals, nations, and even entire worlds. Comprehending this divine plan is a lifelong journey, a process of seeking knowledge, cultivating wisdom, and aligning oneself with the cosmic order. How does one begin to comprehend this divine plan, and what tools and techniques can we employ to unlock its hidden secrets? One approach involves studying sacred texts, such as the Torah, the Kabbalah, and the Hermetic corpus, seeking to decipher the symbolic language and hidden meanings that lie beneath the surface. Another involves engaging in meditative practices, such as visualization, contemplation, and prayer, to quiet the mind and open oneself to divine guidance. Still another involves seeking the counsel of spiritual mentors, teachers, and guides, who can offer insights and perspectives that we might otherwise miss. Understanding the divine plan, therefore, is not a passive endeavor, but an active pursuit that requires dedication, perseverance, and an open mind. By embracing the divine plan, we can unlock our destinies and fulfill our ultimate potential. What role do angels play in the unfolding of this plan, and how do they serve as messengers of divine power? Let's develop the previous points further by introducing the angelic kingdom, that celestial realm of beings who serve as intermediaries between Yahweh and humanity. Angels within different esoteric systems are not merely winged messengers, but conduits and implementers of the divine will, acting as agents of cosmic energy and divine intelligence. They are the celestial architects who help to shape the universe and guide the destinies of individuals and nations, and they are said to mediate between the divine and human realms. Consider the different functions within the angelic orders and their connection to the Sephirot, and ultimately to Yahweh. Each angelic order is associated with a specific Sephirah on the tree of life, reflecting a particular aspect of divine power and consciousness. For example, the seraphim are associated with Keter, the crown, representing the highest level of divine will and pure being. The cherubim are associated with Chokmah, wisdom, representing the divine intellect and the source of all knowledge. The thrones are associated with Binah, understanding, representing the divine compassion and the ability to discern truth from falsehood. How is this power disseminated and delivered, and how can we connect with these angelic forces? The angelic hierarchies can be accessed through various esoteric practices, such as invocation, evocation, and meditation, allowing practitioners to tap into their divine power and receive guidance, protection, and healing. However, the pursuit of divine power is not without its perils, and it is essential to approach these practices with caution, reverence, and ethical awareness. Let's now introduce the potential dangers that arise when the pursuit of divine power shifts from a path of service to a quest for control, manipulation, and ego gratification. There are cases of misinterpretation or ego-driven desires that run contrary to the divine will, leading to negative consequences for both the individual and the world around them. Consider the ethical implications of attempting to harness or manipulate such power, bending it to one's own selfish desires rather than aligning with the greater good. Many grimoires, ancient textbooks of magic, detail methods for controlling these beings. What happens when these methods are used for nefarious purposes, and what are the potential repercussions? Attempting to control or manipulate divine power can lead to a distortion of one's own consciousness, a severing of one's connection to the divine source, and a descent into darkness and delusion. It's like trying to dam a river. The water will eventually find another path, often with destructive consequences. Therefore, it is essential to approach the pursuit of divine power with humility, reverence, and a deep commitment to ethical conduct. But how, then, can we access divine power in a responsible and ethical way, and what practices can we employ to cultivate a deeper connection with Yahweh? Building on the previous points, let us now introduce the concept of theurgy, that ancient art of invoking divine beings and energies to achieve spiritual transformation and manifest desired outcomes. Theurgy, derived from the Greek words theos, God, and ergon, work, involves actively participating in the divine work of creation, aligning oneself with the cosmic forces and channeling divine energy into the world. What rituals, incantations, meditations, or other practices are used in theurgy, and how do they facilitate a connection with Yahweh? Various theurgic methodologies are detailed in grimoires, passed down through generations of esoteric practitioners. These practices often involve elaborate rituals, precise incantations, and complex visualizations designed to create a sacred space and invoke the presence of divine beings. They may also involve the use of talismans, amulets, and other magical objects imbued with divine energy. But how do we ensure that these practices are used ethically and responsibly, and what ethical framework should guide our interactions with the divine? Let's analyze an ethical framework for these practices, detailing morals and intentions when seeking connection to such power. A pure heart and righteous intentions are essential for theurgy, as these practices require careful preparation, ethical conduct, and a deep understanding of the cosmic forces involved. What intentions should guide us when seeking connection to such power? Self-serving versus altruistic aims. Self-serving intentions, such as the desire for personal gain, power, or recognition, can lead to a distortion of one's own consciousness and a severing of one's connection to the divine source. Altruistic aims, such as the desire to heal, help, or uplift others, can lead to a deeper connection with Yahweh and a greater capacity for divine service. But how do we know if we are truly prepared for this level of engagement, and what steps can we take to ensure that our intentions are aligned with the divine will? We have journeyed far, detailing ethical frameworks, morals, and intentions. Is the practitioner prepared for this level of engagement, and have they cultivated the necessary qualities of humility, reverence, and compassion? Are their intentions aligned with the divine will, and are they committed to using their power for the greater good? These are essential questions that must be considered before embarking on the path of theurgy. In synthesis, let us summarize the different forms of esoteric practice and their place within the context of Yahweh, reiterating the dangers and rewards of seeking divine power. Esotericism, as we have seen, offers a multitude of paths for connecting with Yahweh and experiencing divine presence. There are different approaches of application, different practices for tapping into the divine. However, it is essential to approach these practices with caution, reverence, and ethical awareness, recognizing the potential dangers and rewards. And so, what about the divine? Let's synthesize. There are different forms of esoteric practice and their place, different applications, dangers, and rewards. Through esotericism, we seek a deeper connection with the divine, an experience that transcends the limitations of dogma and doctrine. But what if Yahweh is not the end, but merely a stepping stone on the path to something greater? Let us now transcend power and seek new divinity. If Yahweh is not the end, where does one go next? Is there something beyond, something greater, a more ultimate source of creation and consciousness? And if so, where is the path to that something, and how can we embark on this ultimate journey of discovery? What awaits us, dear seekers, is beyond our wildest imaginations. And if you seek the truth, remember this: all you need to do is seek the light. As we journeyed through our prior analysis, seeking to harness divine power and divine will, we recognize the potential dangers and rewards of such esoteric practices. But is there more than one way to view this potential, or even to interpret the source of such power? As we now delve deeper, understanding Yahweh's attributes and origins is not solely confined to the historical context and religious texts of the Levant. It involves recognizing the universal themes and archetypes that resonate across diverse cultures and spiritual traditions. To truly understand Yahweh, and any deity for that matter, it can be useful to see how other cultures have interpreted divinity. Comparative mythology, the study of myths from different cultures to identify similarities and differences, offers a valuable lens through which to examine religious figures. By exploring the parallels between Yahweh and other creator deities, storm gods, and figures of divine authority, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the complex interplay of cultural influences, shared human experiences, and universal spiritual yearnings that have shaped the world's religions. This comparative approach does not diminish Yahweh's significance, but rather enriches our understanding of the universal themes and archetypes present across different spiritual traditions. What insights, then, can be gained by studying Yahweh in relation to other creator deities and cultural narratives of creation? Let us now turn to the Enuma Elish, a foundational creation myth from ancient Mesopotamia, predating the Genesis account. This epic poem, written in Akkadian, provides a detailed account of the creation of the cosmos and the rise of Marduk as the chief deity of the Babylonian pantheon. Its historical importance lies in its influence on subsequent Mesopotamian religious and cultural traditions, including its potential impact on early Hebrew thought. The narrative structure of the Enuma Elish centers on a primordial conflict between the gods and the chaotic forces of Tiamat, the dragon goddess representing the primordial waters. Marduk, a young and powerful god, volunteers to confront Tiamat and restore order to the cosmos. In a fierce battle, Marduk defeats Tiamat, splitting her body in two to create the heavens and the earth. He then establishes the celestial bodies, assigns roles to the other gods, and creates humanity to serve the gods. Compare this to the Genesis creation account, and we identify similarities in the themes of creation from primordial waters, the establishment of order, and the role of a divine figure in shaping the cosmos. However, differences emerge in the portrayal of the creator deity. Marduk's creation is born from violence, a cosmic battle against a primordial adversary. Yahweh, in contrast, creates through divine speech, a manifestation of pure will and intention. This difference in portrayal has significant implications for understanding the respective religious traditions. In the Enuma Elish, the world is created through conflict and struggle, reflecting a worldview that emphasizes the importance of power, order, and the subjugation of chaos. In Genesis, the world is created through divine benevolence and wisdom, reflecting a worldview that emphasizes the goodness of creation and the harmonious relationship between God and humanity. Could these differences reveal more than just contrasting mythologies? Could they point to fundamentally different esoteric understandings of the nature of creation itself. Building on our exploration of Mesopotamian mythology, let us now consider the Egyptian pantheon, emphasizing its complexity and rich symbolism. Among the many deities worshipped in ancient Egypt, Ra, the sun god, and Osiris, the god of the afterlife, stand out as figures that share intriguing parallels with Yahweh. Ra, often depicted as a falcon-headed god with a sun disk above his head, was revered as the creator of the world and the source of all life. His daily journey across the sky symbolized the cyclical nature of time, the triumph of light over darkness, and the constant renewal of creation. The sun was viewed as a powerful symbol for this connection to the divine. Osiris, on the other hand, was primarily associated with death, resurrection, and the afterlife. He was believed to have been a king of Egypt who was murdered by his brother Seth, only to be resurrected by his wife Isis. Osiris became the ruler of the underworld, judging the souls of the dead and offering them the promise of eternal life. Connections to Yahweh's attributes of justice, redemption, and the afterlife, particularly as this idea is developed later in Judeo-Christianity, are plentiful. The Egyptian concept of Ma'at, representing truth, balance, and justice, further reinforces these connections. Ma'at was not merely an abstract ideal, but a cosmic principle that governed the universe and human society. The weighing of the heart ceremony, in which the deceased's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, reflects Yahweh's emphasis on righteousness, ethical conduct, and the ultimate judgment of human actions. But what if the story of Osiris isn't simply an account of death and resurrection, but an alchemical allegory for spiritual transformation, a process of breaking down the old self to make way for the new? Let us now turn to Greek mythology, focusing on Zeus as the king of the gods and his role in establishing order and maintaining justice, and note how these figures connect to Ra and Marduk. Zeus, often depicted as a powerful and imposing figure wielding a thunderbolt, was considered the supreme ruler of Mount Olympus and the enforcer of divine law. His attributes of power, authority, and his role as a lawgiver bear striking parallels to Yahweh's portrayal as a sovereign ruler and enforcer of divine commandments. Zeus's power was not absolute, however. He was bound by fate, mora, a concept that reflects the limitations placed on even the most powerful gods. In contrast to Yahweh's omnipotence and freedom, the Greek concept of fate highlights the idea that even the gods are subject to forces beyond their control. The complex relationships between the Olympian gods and goddesses, with their constant bickering, alliances, and betrayals, offer a glimpse into the human-like qualities attributed to the divine in Greek mythology. This stands in stark contrast to the singular, all-powerful Yahweh, whose authority is unchallenged within the Hebrew Bible. But what if the Greek pantheon, with its multifaceted relationships and struggles for power, reflects a deeper understanding of the interplay of cosmic forces, a dynamic system of energies that shapes the universe and human destiny? How do we understand such nuance? Consider now Hindu cosmology, focusing on the Trimurti, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer, as well as the concept of cyclical time. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva represent the three fundamental forces that govern the universe: creation, preservation, and destruction. Brahma brings the universe into existence, Vishnu maintains balance and dharma, righteous conduct, and Shiva dissolves the old to make way for the new. These cyclical processes of creation, preservation, and destruction reflect the dynamic and ever-changing nature of the cosmos. This cyclical view of time contrasts with the more linear view of creation found in the Abrahamic traditions. The Hindu concepts of karma, action and consequence, and reincarnation further elaborate on the cyclical nature of existence. Karma dictates that every action has a corresponding reaction, shaping an individual's future lives. Reincarnation offers the opportunity for souls to learn, grow, and evolve through multiple lifetimes. In relation to Yahweh's emphasis on justice, accountability, and the ultimate fate of humanity, these concepts provide an alternative perspective on the consequences of human actions. However, are we truly understanding the complexities or the layers upon layers of metaphorical and symbolistic meaning that may be present? As we continue to analyze, it is also important to recognize that each culture interprets and expresses its understanding of the divine through its own unique set of symbols, metaphors, and narratives. These cultural lenses can both illuminate and obscure certain aspects of the divine, depending on the values, beliefs, and historical experiences of a particular society. The key is that no culture has a perfect vision. Consider your own cultural lenses and how they influence your understanding of Yahweh and other religious figures. Do your beliefs shape your perception, or does your perception shape your beliefs? Now we must synthesize this by emphasizing that esoteric schools interpret these creation stories symbolically, how different schools interpret and relate various mythologies, and connect how each god can be a symbol for a force. In esoteric thought, these mythologies are not taken literally, but are viewed as symbolic maps of the human psyche and the cosmos. Each god, goddess, and mythical event represents a specific energy, principle, or stage in the process of spiritual evolution. From an esoteric point of view, these myths are not just stories, but keys to unlocking hidden dimensions of consciousness and accessing the divine potential within ourselves. But are these interpretations merely subjective projections, or do they point to a deeper, more universal truth about the nature of reality? In synthesis, let us summarize the key insights gained from the comparative analysis of Yahweh within the context of global mythologies. We've seen echoes of Yahweh's attributes in figures like Marduk, Ra, Zeus, and the Trimurti, recognizing that this exploration does not diminish Yahweh's significance. It enriches our understanding of universal themes and archetypes present across different spiritual traditions. Appreciating the diversity of human religious expression and the value of interfaith dialogue and understanding is essential. But what if these different expressions of the divine are not separate and distinct entities, but rather different facets of a single, underlying reality, a universal consciousness that transcends all cultural and religious boundaries? And so, we arrive at the final point. If we have looked at other cultures and their interpretations, what does this all truly mean? Does something new come of these connections? If so, what do we do with it now? What more can we possibly seek to explore and create? Having explored Yahweh's connections to other deities, could there be another way to consider the connections between man, the divine, and the esoteric keys that unlock greater insight? As we recap the various esoteric frameworks explored, such as Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and Jungian psychology, we begin to see how various systems overlap and echo each other. But could a new framework emerge to synthesize and illuminate these esoteric systems? Let us introduce the concept of the sacred tree, a modern Kabbalistic ray interpretation that seeks to provide a renewed understanding of Yahweh, the Sephirot, and the intricate relationship between humanity and the divine. It is vital to emphasize from the outset that this system is not intended as a replacement for traditional Kabbalistic teachings or other established spiritual paths. Instead, it should be viewed as a contemporary interpretation, one that builds upon the ancient frameworks and symbolism we have previously discussed, adapting them to resonate with the modern seeker. It serves as an added layer to allow for new insights, not as a replacement. How then can this complex understanding bring about a transformative understanding of both ourselves and the divine source from which we spring? To truly grasp the nuances of this modern interpretation, let us revisit the Tree of Life and its 10 Sephirot, building upon the foundations we laid in Section 7. In the sacred tree paradigm, each Sephirah is re-examined through a new lens, revealing fresh perspectives on Yahweh's attributes and their relevance to the individual's spiritual journey. Rather than viewing Keter simply as the crown or the ultimate source of divine emanation, it is reinterpreted as the embodiment of divine will, the unmanifest potential that precedes all creation. This shift in perspective encourages us to contemplate the nature of our own will and how it aligns with the divine plan. Chakma, traditionally associated with wisdom, becomes the wellspring of divine intellect, the active force that shapes and gives form to creation. This interpretation emphasizes the importance of cultivating our own intellect, not merely as a tool for acquiring knowledge, but as a means of discerning truth and understanding the underlying principles of reality. Binah, often understood as understanding or discernment, transforms into divine intuition, the receptive force that absorbs and internalizes the wisdom of Chakma. This highlights the crucial role of intuition in our spiritual development, urging us to trust our inner knowing and to cultivate a deep connection with the divine source of wisdom. Hesed, traditionally associated with mercy and loving kindness, becomes divine grace, the unconditional love and compassion that flows freely from the divine to all beings. This Ray interpretation encourages us to embody grace in our own lives, extending compassion and forgiveness to ourselves and others. Jebura, traditionally associated with strength and justice, is reimagined as divine power, the dynamic force that brings about transformation and enforces divine law. This shift in perspective invites us to explore our own power, not as a means of domination or control, but as a tool for manifesting our highest potential and creating positive change in the world. Tiferet, often associated with beauty and harmony, becomes divine heart, the center of love, compassion, and spiritual balance within the cosmos. This Ray interpretation emphasizes the importance of cultivating our own heart center, connecting with our emotions, and aligning our actions with our deepest values. Netzach, traditionally associated with victory and endurance, transforms into divine creativity, the boundless potential for artistic expression, innovation, and the manifestation of new realities. This encourages us to tap into our own creative potential, using our talents and gifts to bring beauty, joy, and inspiration to the world. Had, traditionally associated with splendor and majesty, becomes divine communication, the clear and effective expression of divine truth through language, symbolism, and various forms of media. This Ray interpretation emphasizes the importance of honing our communication skills, using our words and actions to convey truth, inspire others, and build bridges of understanding. Yesod, traditionally associated with the foundation and the subconscious mind, is reimagined as divine imagination, the limitless realm of dreams, visions, and creative possibilities that shapes our reality. This encourages us to cultivate our own imagination, exploring the depths of our subconscious mind and harnessing the power of visualization to manifest our desires. Malkuth, traditionally associated with the kingdom and the material world, becomes divine presence, the tangible manifestation of the divine in all aspects of creation. This Ray interpretation emphasizes the importance of recognizing the sacredness of the physical world and finding the divine within our everyday experiences. Might these reinterpretations lead to new revelations about our relationship with Yahweh and the very fabric of reality? Building upon these reinterpretations of the Sephirot, another concept stemming from Kabbalah takes center stage: the sacred marriage. In this esoteric interpretation, the divine is not seen as a singular, unified entity, but rather as a dynamic interplay of male and female counterparts, each embodying distinct yet complementary aspects of the divine. This concept draws upon the ancient understanding of the divine as both transcendent and immanent, encompassing both masculine and feminine energies. The male aspect represents the active, assertive, and creative force, while the female aspect embodies the receptive, nurturing, and transformative power. To achieve union and wholeness within the divine, these two aspects must be balanced and integrated. This brings us to the concept of the Shekinah, often described as the female embodiment of the divine presence. The Shekinah represents the nurturing, compassionate, and accessible aspect of the divine mother who dwells among us and provides comfort, guidance, and protection. The Shekinah is often associated with the 10th Sephirah, Malkuth, representing the manifestation of the divine in the material world. Does this interpretation offer a more accurate and relatable representation of spirituality for the individual seeker, fostering a deeper sense of connection and belonging? Transitioning from the theoretical to the practical, we must now consider the ethical responsibilities that arise when engaging with this modern interpretation of the Kabbalah. As we discussed previously, understanding the nature of divine power is crucial. With knowledge comes responsibility, and the power to interpret and apply esoteric knowledge must be wielded with utmost care and discernment. What then are some potential misuses or misappropriations of this new structure? One potential danger lies in the tendency to essentialize or reify these concepts, treating them as fixed and immutable truths rather than as fluid and evolving interpretations. This can lead to dogmatism, exclusion, and the suppression of alternative perspectives. Another potential misuse involves the application of these concepts for personal gain, manipulation, or the exercise of undue influence over others. Understanding and intent are of the utmost importance. For example, attempting to use the sacred tree as a tool for controlling others, or for satisfying one's own ego-driven desires, would be a gross violation of its ethical principles. However, balanced with these ethical considerations, what potential rewards await those who approach the sacred tree with reverence, humility, and a genuine desire for spiritual growth? This new understanding and interpretation can unlock profound opportunities for self-discovery, spiritual connection, and personal transformation. By engaging with the sacred tree, individuals can gain a deeper understanding of their own inner landscape, their strengths and weaknesses, their potential and their limitations. This improved sense of self-awareness can lead to significant changes in daily life, empowering individuals to make more conscious choices, cultivate healthier relationships, and live more authentically in alignment with their values. Moreover, the sacred tree can serve as a bridge to a more profound connection with the divine, fostering a sense of purpose, meaning, and belonging in the universe. Imagine, for instance, someone struggling with feelings of isolation and disconnection, finding solace and connection through the Shekinah, recognizing the divine feminine presence within themselves and the world around them. Consider another individual grappling with anger and resentment, finding healing and forgiveness through Hesed, embracing the unconditional love and compassion that flows from the divine. How can this transformative sense of understanding change daily life and the ability to live more fulfilled? Returning to our ongoing discussion of global mythologies, it is essential to recognize that this understanding of the sacred tree resonates with narratives and archetypes found across diverse cultures and spiritual traditions. Just as we explored connections between Yahweh and figures like Marduk, Ra, Zeus, and the Trimurti, so too can we find parallels between the sacred tree and other symbolic representations of the cosmos, the human psyche, and the journey of spiritual awakening. The concept of divine male and female counterparts, for example, echoes in the Taoist yin and yang, the Egyptian Isis and Osiris, and the Hindu Shiva and Shakti. By recognizing these connections, we further expand our collective understanding of the divine and reinforce the idea that humanity's spiritual longings are not confined to any single culture or tradition. The more connections we make, the more we strengthen our global understanding of the divine. For those drawn to explore this structure further, several practical steps can be taken to implement and study the sacred tree. First and foremost, a thorough grounding in the traditional teachings of the Kabbalah is essential. Familiarize yourself with the tree of life, the Sephirot, and the various symbols, correspondences, and practices associated with this ancient wisdom tradition. Next, immerse yourself in the study of comparative mythology, exploring the creation stories, deities, and spiritual practices of diverse cultures. Seek out reputable teachers, mentors, and study groups who can provide guidance, support, and feedback on your journey. Be sure to examine and implement these methodologies safely and ethically. Consider texts such as Dion Fortune's The Mystical Kabbalah or Lon Milo Du Quet's The Chicken Kabbalah. As we synthesize this new perspective, let us reiterate the key connections we have explored. We have seen how this modern ray interpretation of the Kabbalah can offer fresh insights into Yahweh's attributes, the relationship between humanity and the divine, and the universal themes that resonate across diverse spiritual traditions. We have emphasized the importance of ethical considerations, the potential rewards of genuine spiritual inquiry, and the value of seeking guidance and support from experienced teachers and mentors. As we build upon all previous sections to summarize what has been discussed, it is now time to close in on Yahweh, to consider how this journey has transformed our understanding of this central figure in Western religions. In closing, we must ask, beyond Yahweh, what echoes of divinity remain to be discovered? Beyond the old and the new, beyond the historical and the esoteric, is this truly the end of our journey? Or is there more beyond the veil, waiting to be unveiled, inviting us to continue our quest for truth, wisdom, and spiritual awakening? As we stand at this crossroads, having traversed the intricate pathways of historical analysis, mythological echoes, and esoteric interpretations of Yahweh, one question lingers above all others. How can we translate this complex understanding into practical steps for personal growth and spiritual development? This discussion has far more practical applications than mere intellectual stimulation, and so you may need to pay extra careful attention to reap the full benefits. Let us first revisit the concept of Yahweh's shadow, that darker, less comfortable aspect of the divine we previously explored, and consider its profound implications for our own personal transformation. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents the unconscious aspects of our personality that we often deny or repress, those traits, emotions, and behaviors that we deem unacceptable or undesirable. This shadow can manifest as negative patterns, destructive tendencies, and a general sense of unease or discontent. However, as Jung himself elucidated, acknowledging and integrating the shadow is essential for achieving wholeness and spiritual maturity, for it is through embracing our imperfections that we unlock our true potential for growth, empathy, and self-acceptance. Consider, for instance, the anger you feel when someone has wronged you. Suppressing the anger doesn't eliminate it, rather, it festers and corrupts. Recognizing the feeling and understanding its origins is a more productive method of managing it. To embark on this journey of shadow integration, we must first learn to recognize and confront our own hidden darkness. This requires a willingness to be honest with ourselves, to examine our motivations and behaviors without judgment, and to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. Specific tools to accomplish this exist, allowing one to safely explore the depths of the subconscious. Practices such as journaling, meditation, and even therapy can provide valuable insights into the nature of our shadow and help us to develop healthier coping mechanisms. By shining the light of awareness on these hidden aspects of ourselves, we can begin to dismantle their power over us and integrate them into a more balanced and harmonious whole. Moreover, by learning to accept our imperfections and learning from our mistakes, we cultivate greater empathy, compassion, and self-acceptance, not only for ourselves, but for others as well. As we recognize our own capacity for darkness, we become more understanding and forgiving of the flaws and failings of those around us, fostering deeper connections and more meaningful relationships. Is it not through such understanding that we truly become more complete? Building upon this foundation of shadow integration, let us now turn to the practice of theurgy, that ancient art of invoking the divine and actively participating in the co-creation of reality. While the term may sound esoteric and inaccessible, theurgy simply refers to a set of rituals and practices that can be used to connect with the divine and empower oneself on the spiritual path. One such ritual, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, or LBRP, is a foundational practice in many Western esoteric traditions. This ritual involves invoking the four archangels, Raphael, Gabriel, Michael, and Uriel, to create a protective sphere around the practitioner, banishing negative energies and invoking the presence of divine forces. The LBRP serves not only to cleanse and protect one's sacred space, but also to cultivate a deeper sense of connection with the divine and to empower oneself to manifest one's intentions. Might this ritual allow one to be free from the chaos of daily life? To perform the LBRP, one typically begins by standing in the center of the space, facing east, and visualizing a brilliant white light emanating from above. One then traces an invoking pentagram in the air with a wand or outstretched finger, vibrating a divine name, such as Yahweh or Adonai. This process is repeated in each of the four cardinal directions, creating a circle of protective energy around the practitioner. Finally, one invokes the archangels, calling upon their specific qualities and attributes to assist in the ritual. Through this process of invocation and visualization, the practitioner aligns themselves with the divine forces and empowers themselves to create positive change in their life. By engaging in regular theurgic practices, such as the LBRP, one can cultivate a deeper sense of connection with Yahweh or whatever divine force resonates most strongly, enhance one's spiritual awareness, and empower oneself to manifest one's intentions with greater clarity and effectiveness. But how does one know they are proceeding ethically and morally? This brings us to the crucial importance of ethical considerations when engaging in esoteric practices. As we have seen throughout our exploration of Yahweh, the path to spiritual enlightenment is not without its potential pitfalls and dangers. It is therefore essential to approach these practices with integrity, responsibility, and reverence, always mindful of the potential consequences of our actions on ourselves and others. One guiding principle for ethical action is the concept of do no harm. This simple yet profound principle urges us to consider the potential impact of our actions on all those involved, seeking to minimize harm and maximize benefit. When engaging in esoteric practices, it is important to ask ourselves whether our intentions are aligned with the divine will, whether we are seeking to serve the greater good rather than pursuing selfish desires, and whether our actions are likely to cause harm to ourselves, others, or the environment. Consider, for example, someone using magical practices to manipulate another person's free will. This would be a clear violation of the do no harm principle, as it infringes upon the other person's autonomy and potentially causes them emotional or psychological distress. When we embody such divine attributes, how does that translate into daily life? Transitioning from these theoretical concepts to concrete actions, it is crucial to emphasize the importance of embodying divine attributes in our daily lives. It is not enough to simply intellectualize these concepts or engage in esoteric practices in isolation. We must also strive to live our lives in accordance with the principles of kindness, compassion, and justice. This means cultivating empathy and understanding in our relationships, treating others with respect and dignity, and standing up for those who are marginalized or oppressed. It also means engaging in acts of service, such as volunteering our time, donating to charitable causes, or advocating for social justice issues. By embodying divine attributes in our daily lives, we not only transform our own lives, but also contribute to creating a more loving, just, and harmonious world for all. Consider this: every time you act with kindness, you send ripples of positivity throughout the world. In addition to embodying divine attributes in our actions, it is also essential to cultivate a sense of community and connection with like-minded individuals. The spiritual journey can be challenging and isolating at times, and it is important to have a support system of friends, mentors, and teachers who can provide guidance, encouragement, and accountability along the way. Seeking out spiritual communities, whether online or in person, that resonate with our values and beliefs can provide a sense of belonging, enhance our learning, and inspire us to reach our full potential. Mentors, teachers, and guides can offer valuable insights, perspectives, and tools for navigating the complexities of the spiritual path. Participating in a spiritual community can foster a sense of shared purpose, deepen our understanding, and provide us with the support and encouragement we need to stay committed to our journey. But where does one find community, and how do they know the teaching is sound? Furthermore, it is essential to recognize the limitations of literal interpretations of religious texts and to embrace symbolism, allegory, and personal interpretation in our understanding of Yahweh and the divine. The ancient texts, such as the Bible and the Kabbalah, are filled with symbolic language, metaphors, and allegories that are intended to be interpreted on multiple levels. By embracing this symbolic approach, we can unlock deeper layers of meaning and foster a more authentic and meaningful relationship with the divine. As we explore different religious and spiritual traditions, drawing inspiration from diverse sources while remaining true to our own path, we must develop our own unique understanding of Yahweh and the divine, based on our own experiences, insights, and intuition. What doors are we opening when we embrace this freedom of thought? Finally, we must remember that the spiritual journey is a lifelong process, not a destination. There is always more to learn, explore, and discover, and we must remain open to new perspectives, experiences, and possibilities. Embracing mystery, uncertainty, and change as opportunities for growth and transformation, we can cultivate a sense of curiosity, wonder, and humility, allowing us to remain open to the unexpected and to find joy in the journey itself. By embracing the ongoing nature of the spiritual path, we can lead more fulfilling and meaningful lives, filled with purpose, passion, and joy. But what awaits us beyond the winding roads of the spiritual path? In synthesis, let us remember the key themes and concepts we have explored throughout this journey. We have delved into the historical, mythological, and esoteric dimensions of Yahweh, examining the complex forces that have shaped the development of this central figure in Western religions. We have explored the concept of Yahweh's shadow, the practice of theurgy, the importance of ethical considerations, the embodiment of divine attributes, the role of community, the limitations of literal interpretations, and the ongoing nature of the spiritual journey. We hope this journey of understanding Yahweh has also been a journey of self-discovery, leading to a deeper connection with the divine and a more profound sense of purpose and meaning. Perhaps, the ultimate goal of the spiritual journey is to transcend all limitations and unite with the ultimate source of all existence. Therefore, let us continue our spiritual exploration with courage, curiosity, and an open heart, always seeking to deepen our understanding, expand our awareness, and embody the divine attributes in our daily lives. For it is through this ongoing journey of self-discovery and transformation that we can truly unlock our full potential and contribute to creating a more loving, just, and harmonious world for all. But what awaits humanity as we transition into the age of Aquarius? As we draw near the end of our exploration into the hidden origins of Yahweh, let us pause to reflect on the complex tapestry we have woven, acknowledging the diverse threads of history, mythology, and esoteric interpretation that have contributed to the evolution of this iconic deity. It is by design that you've heard information from so many different sources and lenses. This is an incredibly intricate matter that requires a vast understanding. Throughout our journey, we have traversed the shifting sands of ancient Near Eastern cultures, tracing the transformation of a storm god into the singular focus of monotheistic worship. We've examined the profound influence of cultural exchange and syncretism, witnessing how Yahweh absorbed attributes and epithets from other deities, such as El and Baal, to consolidate his power and appeal. We've also explored the role of political dynamics in shaping religious beliefs, observing how the rise of the Israelite monarchy and the destruction of rival temples cemented Yahweh's dominance. Ultimately, the history of Yahweh is far more dynamic than most realize. Returning to the initial question of how a storm god became the one true deity, we can now appreciate the intricate interplay of historical circumstances, cultural influences, and political machinations that contributed to this remarkable transformation. The esoteric interpretations we've explored further illuminate the deeper symbolism and mystical dimensions of Yahweh's identity, revealing his connection to cosmic forces and the potential for human transformation. The deeper we look, the more information we find, so the ultimate answer is most definitely multifaceted. The implications of our exploration extend far beyond the narrow confines of ancient history and religious studies. By understanding the dynamic and evolving nature of religious beliefs, we can cultivate greater religious tolerance, promote interfaith dialogue, and foster a deeper appreciation of cultural diversity. Recognizing that religious traditions are not static entities, but rather fluid and adaptable expressions of human spirituality, we can approach those with different beliefs with greater empathy, understanding, and respect. Might this understanding promote harmony and quell the discord between belief systems? We trust that this journey through complex and potentially challenging material has expanded your awareness, deepened your understanding, and inspired you to continue your own spiritual exploration with courage, curiosity, and an open heart. The intellectual effort you've put forth has been duly noted, and it is through such dedication that true understanding blossoms. For as we seek to unravel the mysteries of the past, we also unlock new possibilities for personal growth, social harmony, and spiritual evolution. You've already done more than most by simply taking the time to learn, so keep the ball rolling. In closing, let us remember that the story of Yahweh is a testament to the dynamic and evolving nature of religious belief. It is a reminder that the search for the divine is an ongoing quest, and that there is always more to learn, explore, and discover. It is a call to embrace mystery, uncertainty, and change as opportunities for growth and transformation, and to find joy in the journey itself. And so we can confidently state that monotheism, as it is commonly understood, is the result of a long and complex process of religious evolution, cultural exchange, and political maneuvering, rather than a sudden or miraculous revelation. We encourage you to share your own thoughts, interpretations, and insights in the comments section below, fostering a sense of community and shared exploration. What aspects of Yahweh's story resonated most strongly with you? How might this understanding inform your own spiritual path? What further questions does it raise? We eagerly await your contributions to this ongoing dialogue. If you'd like to further your understanding, consider exploring ancient Near Eastern mythology, Kabbalah, or comparative religion. Finally, we reiterate our commitment to providing a balanced and non-dogmatic perspective on religious history, striving to present information with accuracy, integrity, and respect for diverse viewpoints. While we acknowledge the existence of alternative interpretations and perspectives, we stand by the evidence and analysis presented in this video, confident that it offers a valuable contribution to the ongoing quest for knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. For as we strive to unravel the mysteries of the past, we also unlock new possibilities for personal growth, social harmony, and spiritual evolution. The solution lies in continued seeking, critical thinking, and a commitment to truth. Therefore, always seek the light, and so it is. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate you manifesting your engagement by hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the notification bell.